that it's a 3-hour wait. She in school to do nails, oh I hope she fails. I wish for bad letters in the mail. Hope you forgot your charger on your trip. Hope you get sick, hope karma get you for the shit you did. Karma, karma, karma. I hope karma gets that bitch. Ooh, karma, karma, karma. I hope karma gets that bitch. We fucked up what we had. Believe I'm still mad. You did me wrong, girl. I hope karma gets your ass. I hope China get hit with a million tariffs and the price for your hair go up. Hope you're working from home and your internet fucks up. Hope you catch a new man cheat. Hope that nigga lose every parlay. I'm petty in every single way. Hope your rent goes up. Hope your little cousin don't get drafted to the league. Ooh, hope that couple over your apartment moving new furniture at night. I wish nothing but bad things in your life. I hope that show you watch get canceled before the last season.
Adolf Hitler, codename Das Wolf. Adolf Hitler, born Adolf Spukgor, was born April 20, 1889 in Braunau am Inn, Austria. Adolf Hitler is the half-blooded bastard child of Warch aristocrat Jeb Spukgor. Unlike his father Jeb, Adolf Hitler has to perform human and animal sacrifices in order to access his supernatural abilities. Hitler has a natural ability to hypnotize and mind control his victims via hand gestures, eye contact for more than 17 seconds, and fluid binding bondage contaminating one's food, drinks, wounds membrane with Hitler's own bodily fluids like spit, boogers, saliva, blood, urine, fingernails, toenails, hair etc. without doing a human sacrifice, as long as he can collect traumatized spirit energy aka louche from the people he traumatizes via spiritual, sexual, financial, physical or germ warfare and sociopathy. Hitler's task is to destabilize as many nations as possible via Nazi subversion through the use of the media, sleeper agents, and mass fertility. Adolf Hitler's natal chart is Sun in Taurus, Moon in Capricorn and Libra rising. Fun fact: Adolf Hitler was born on the 420 Blazeit day. Another fun fact: Jimmy Cliff has the same moon and rising sign as Adolf Hitler.
Question them, who go Peter King Mansion? To get satisfaction. If you want for you know batty boy fi get the pump action. Yeah, which one I wanna pussy?
Barnabas Barney Walker
forget
Jr.
the Uzi. No deal with nobody thing now go work here. If you find say your batty boy inna the dance, well you know him get hurt here. For
The Jackal of Saturn.
Bruce come on TV and have this conversation. Him tell them this is not a batty nation. We no play number 2. Batty is not for we. I can't believe it. Them no one put on it. Man, I get them on it.
Barnabas Barney Walker Jr. was born April 1, 1923 in St. James, Jamaica. He is the middle child of 3, which includes his older brother Nelson and his younger brother Warren. Barney's father Barnaby is a stout tycoon who happened to own all of the prisons in the island of Jamaica, and is the Jamaican government's head Obia high priest. Barney's mother Tess Collins, who's secretly Barnaby's half-sister out of wedlock to keep the wealth in the family, was a high priestess in Aleister Crowley's coven. The Walker bloodline is another Warch bloodline that rules the world just like the Spukgor family. However, the politically fascist Anglo-Germanic Spukgor's goal is to use genocide and mass murder for their new world order, while the Celtic Walker family is a family of socialist Marxist Jews who rather weaponize minorities to get their new world order accomplished with the use of proxy wars, false flags, race wars, socio-political subversion, Hollywood propaganda, MKUltra, destroying the nuclear family unit, and witchcraft. Although the Walker family is Scottish, their origins trace back to the ancient land bordering ancient Israel known as Edom, in what is now southwestern Jordan, between the Dead Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba dating back at least 72 BC. Barney is the direct descendant of King Herod the Great, aka king of the Herodian kingdom of Judea. The relationship between the Edomites and the Israelites was rather complex, marked by both kinship and violent conflict. King Herod ruled Judea with an iron fist beginning from 37 BCE to 4 BCE. The Edomites refused the Israelites' passage through their land during the Exodus, and there was numerous instances of conflict between the two nations. The Edomites were often enemies of Israel and were condemned by the prophets in the Bible for their hostility, especially given the fact that it was King Herod himself who predicted the birth of Christ, and did everything he could to conspire the assassination of Christ before he became an adult. King Herod had a premonition from a demon known as Baal that showed him that there would be a son of God who would be the new king of the Jews. King Herod, appointed by Rome as the king of the Jews, was jealous, threatened and paranoid by his vision of the birth of Christ. King Herod not only viewed Jesus as a threat to his system of rulership, but also as a rival that has yet to be born. A day later, the Magi, wise men or psychics guided by a star, arrived in Jerusalem seeking the newborn king, prompting Herod to inquire about his premonition. King Herod gives 3 bars of gold each to the Magi to pay to locate this newborn king of the Jews. King Herod directs the Magi to Bethlehem, asking them to return and inform him of the child's location so he can worship the child as well, but secretly intends to kill the child by stabbing him in baby Jesus' heart as an offering to Baal for immortality. While sleeping en route to Bethlehem, the Magi had a dream warning them to abort King Herod's commission and never return to him. The dream showed all of King Herod's plans for Christ, leading to the Magi immediately aborting the mission and throwing their gold in the ocean. The furious King Herod ordered the killing of all male infants in Bethlehem, fulfilling the prophecy of Rachel weeping for her children. Within the chaos, Archangel Michael warned Joseph in a dream about King Herod's plans for Mary's child, prompting the Holy Family to flee to Egypt to escape Herod's wrath. Herod died in 4 BCE around the age of 69 from arteriosclerosis after unsuccessfully trying to take his own life. There were tensions in Judea at the time as Herod ruled both Romans and Jews. All this was a result of all his wicked black magic, and the murders of innocent children to rebel against God for his pride backfiring back to him energetically. King Herod's symptoms starting shortly after his attempted human sacrifice of Christ, included intense itching, intestinal pain, breathlessness, convulsions, and gangrene of the genitals due to a secondary infection like Fournier's gangrene. Within 3 generations, the family migrated to what's known as modern-day Scotland. Migration was easy for the Walkers considering how they married their way into Viking leadership due to their bloodline or experts at pagan magic due to them being warches. The Walkers would easily summon pagan and Norse gods with ease without doing much work for a ritual unless it's for blood magic. The Walkers would protect Viking leaderships and their weapons with protection spells to conquer all nations undefeated. The Walkers' ultimate goal was to rule Scotland from within but take over the New World, North America, all for themselves. In order to do this, around the 1400s, the Walker family had an idea to get the Moors and the Templars angry enough with each other to keep a non-stop war going over race and religion, and have an excuse to start their slavery operations in the New World. The Walkers at the time were aware of Leif Erikson's Tales of the New World, and wanted to have North America to themselves to turn an entire continent with under their complete obedience. The goal was to have a world where they can do their black magic and get away with it in broad daylight, since they are tired of hiding their true nature to humanity. The Walkers practiced Judaism and satanic magic in secrecy until the 17th century. In the 17th century, the Walkers took advantage of Jewish migration to Europe to frame their mass human sacrifices on the immigrating Jews new to Scotland. Around the same time, the Walker family was already heavily involved in the slave trade by providing steel shackles to slave-driving families like the Rivera, Collins, Gonzalez, and Sanchez families, as well as to their English cousins in the Fowler family. The Walkers' claim to fame in the slave trade was being one of the first slave plantations in Jamaica. Due to the Walker family's gold and steel empire, the Walker family was secretly behind the power of the Spanish and English monarch and made a pact with them to have full ownership of the island of Jamaica, in exchange for free steel surplus to their military-industrial complex. The Walkers weaponized the Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese governments with the use of providing them gold from their bloodline's rulership of Edom, to invade Africa for more gold and to have unlimited manual labor, and spread Catholicism to Africans. Once the pact was made, England officially became the sole occupant of Jamaica, and Barney's family officially migrated to Jamaica. By the early 1800s, the Walkers were the biggest slave-driving bloodline in the world. Starting with Barney's extended family members. Trelawney, Jamaica's slave owner Alexander McLaughlin, notorious for holding enslaved people working on the Cheshire plantation, also owned a pen called the Reserve and the Rock Pleasant Pen. Alex was slave master so cruel that he would have the children of his slaves suffering from separation anxiety get buck broken in front of their mothers at John Fowler's plantation known as the Friendship Estate in Trelawney, Jamaica. Alexander's will proved in 1783, he owned the enslaved people and made provisions for them and his family even beyond death. Then we have Alex's son Hugh McLaughlin, known for his involvement in inventorying enslaved persons at Windsor Estate and Williamsfield Settlement in St. Elizabeth Parish. Astronomer and former House Assemblyman of St. Elizabeth, Jamaica Alexander McFarland, who owned multiple sugar plantations and a whopping 800 slaves in Jamaica. James Stewart Jr., owner of the Stewart Castle Plantation between 1809 to 1819, in which the number of enslaved people recorded each year was around 300 to 400. 1800. James was Custos Rotulorum of the parish of Trelawney, Jamaica between 1800–1821, one of the commissioners who established Stewart Town, near the border of Trelawney Parish within St. Ann Parish, a lieutenant colonel in the Jamaica militia in which James played a prominent role in the Second Maroon War of 1795–1796, leading the 3rd column of the Trelawney militia. Edward Chambers Sr. owned 243 enslaved people at the time of his estate's probate in 1760. Edward Chambers Jr. also owned land and enslaved people in Hanover, Jamaica. Richard Chambers enslaved people in Hanover, Jamaica, from 1817 onwards, potentially in right of his wife, Elizabeth Alice Chambers, according to the Legacies of British Slavery Database. Alexander Chambers of Hanover, Jamaica, owned enslaved people and left a will in 1741, and John Chambers, a slave owner whose estate was involved in legal proceedings after his death in 1831. Barney's family traffics the descendants of these slaves internationally to their own family members and other diplomat bloodlines involved in the CIA and federal government, covertly by way of MK Ultra operations, human trafficking by way of sexual slavery, drug trafficking, gang-stalking operations, to get money off of their life insurance policies and social security. Barney started his career at just 16 years old as a field agent in the OSS. Barney was mainly used as a saboteur against spook war operations in Western Europe. His older brother Warren was the owner of the biggest steel manufacturing company in the United States and England, while his younger brother Nelson was the CEO of his family's oil and petroleum rigs. At the age of 18, Barney became an OSS commanding officer after Warren was assassinated by the Spookor family, lacing his vodka with bleach in Venice, under the orders of Jeb Spookor. Barney's goal was to get revenge on the Spookors and enslave their family for the assassination and for hexing his whole bloodline to extinction for not wanting to be involved in their Nazi operations, and for introducing Marxism and homosexual pornography into Germany. In 1944, Barnaby dies from vomiting out his own heart while on a business trip in Spain. It was discovered that Yang Cheng made a deal with Wilhelm Spookor to give Germany half territorial power over Japan, in exchange for the death of Barnaby. Enraged, Barney decided to plot operations, Kingslayer, and Cursebreaker, with the help of Jerry Jonas, Martin Loomis, and Eric Zuden, all whose family members did unspeakable acts against children and animals on camera on the Foo Foo Express and Foo Foo Island. Out of all of them, Barney is the only one that was actually on the island, best friends with Yang Cheng, is a full-blown pedophile with a preference for young black or ethnic children between the ages of a baby to 14 years old, and deeply involved in distributing Othis Delgado Diaz's child pornography. Barney decided to pay Lemurian paramilitary members in gold bars and gold coins for the assassination of Yang Cheng and the sabotaging of his blackmail operations. But they all kept getting fired by Yang Cheng with what's assumed to be elemental witchcraft. Barney told Jerry to assign Hector Kwan and Kaya Shinkalabwe under the recommendation of Martin Loomis and the Queen of England due to their Lemurian heritage and ruthless fighting abilities. Barney wanted to have the whole island blown up to destroy all evidence on the island's existence, and ownership of Yang Cheng's dead body to examine what species Yang is, since there's been a psychic block on the genetic lineage of the Yang family. Barney took advantage of Kaya retiring the armed forces by hiring Hector Kwan on a war raid on Spookor Castle. The mission was an off-the-books military contract out on the heads of brothers Jeb and Wilhelm Spookor. The goal was to go to Argentina and have Barney lead the raid on Spookor Castle by air and land on Broomstick, aka the Boomstick by Gaslighting Industries, against Wilhelm Spookor, while Hector raids the castle from underground to assassinate Jeb Spookor. The raid began on September 17, 1947 at 6:06 a.m. in Patagonia, Argentina. The disgustingly gory dog fight in the skies lasted 32 minutes, while the battle in Spookor Castle lasted 33 minutes. Barney's battle with Wilhelm on the rooftop of the castle lasted exactly 6 minutes and 6 seconds, which ended in Barney using magic and astral projection on Wilhelm, causing Wilhelm to choke to death by his own prolapsed colon forcefully removed from him. While Wilhelm choked to death on his own asshole, Barney detected a very power energy source coming from Jeb's bedroom. Barney went to the source and found out that Jeb had a supercomputer in his bedroom. Barney examined the computer, which turned out to be an AI program labeled Looking Glass. Barney sees a list of names and files of all of his family members with all of their traits, talents, strengths, weakness, diet, health, sexual taste, medical records, associates, past, present and future friends, enemies and sexual partners, and natal charts of all members of their family, with a list of different probabilities. Barney discovered that the supercomputer he found was a precognition artificial intelligence supercomputer that can calculate probable futures of individuals and world events based on their natal charts and astrological alignments in the universe. Barney realized he can use the supercomputer to not only create world events but to play God in peoples and alter their destinies with MK Ultra and CIA resources. The day after the raid, the CIA was created under the guidance of President Truman with the signing of the National Security Act, and funding from Barney Walker, Gaslighting Industries, the Jonas family, and the Diaz family. The CIA was made as a money laundering front for their bloodline's criminal operations internationally under the guise of protecting United States national security against the USSR. Barney took the Looking Glass supercomputer, reverse engineered it and sold copies of the technology to all nations. Because of this, every government around the world can alter and switch the destinies of anyone on planet Earth. After World War II, New York City saw a surge in heroin consumption, with a shift in user demographics from older, white working-class males to primarily African American and Latino drug users in segregated neighborhoods. Barney Walker and Othis Delgado Diaz's younger brother Rafael Diaz. They started heavily pushing heroin into black and Latino communities in Harlem and made billions of dollars. While Martin Loomis, a British-American Ashkenazi Jew, was alive, neither him nor Hector trusted Barney because of Operation Paperclip and for Barney sleeping with his wife and brainwashing his son Richard against him. Martin also hated the fact that he was a coward that liked to make his people look bad by always hiding behind his Jewish identity to avoid accountability of him and his family's corruption and their ties to the Havara Agreement. Since December 13, 1947, Barney Walker used the money he made from selling the Looking Glass supercomputer to buy 90% of the production and distribution companies in Hollywood. Barney is in competition with Jeremy Zudin and the Diaz family in terms of ownership in Hollywood. The Diaz and Walker family also used Hollywood to wash their drug money by funding film productions. Due to Barney's family officially being the richest bloodline in the world, and a power shift after the deaths of Jeb and Wilhelm Spookgore, Barney Walker and his family had unlimited power over the United Nations due to also being the winners of World War II. Barney started the Vietnam War by hiring assets left from Yongcheng and Rogue Lemurians to plant bombs in the American U-boats stationed at the Gulf of Tonkin on August 2, 1964. The war was money laundering proxy war scheme to cover up for Barney, Raffle, and Richard's heroin and human trafficking operations out of the poppy fields of Vietnam, and a massive human sacrifice for Barney's family's unlimited power over both capitalism and communism. Shortly after Martin died of a heart attack after the assassination of Malcolm X in 1964, Barney married Martin's wife and adopted his son. Barney took Richard under his wing and gave him his first job as weapons development and research in DARPA in 1965. Richard Dick Loomis took advantage of all the poppy seeds Barney got during Operation Phoenix and decided to start selling his own shipments by flooding it into Harlem and the Bronx in New York. Raffle and Barney realized Richard was a natural at distributing drugs and made a deal with Richard to amplify the high of their heroin, in exchange for Richard getting 33% of their profits. Another aspect of the deal is in order to save money on distribution to only sell cocaine and LSD in the suburbs, while only selling heroin and PCP to the black and Latino communities. Since the raid on Spookgore Castle, Barney has grown his sick-twisted obsession with Hector Kwan due to the way Hector dealt with the operation, and the fact that Hector and his future offspring was the highest probability to take down their family's corrupted influence on humanity, along with Jerry Jonas's grandson, Yongcheng's granddaughter, and Malcolm Bertrand's grandson. Barney decided to make his family have physical and spiritual influence, power and control over those bloodlines with the use of behavior modification human experiments, MKUltra, and Operation Bluebird, and overburden those bloodlines with non-stop witchcraft, social engineering, and human trafficking them to Barney's extended family, by installing Barney's family members into the targets of obsession's life and have them get married into those families to gain their inheritance and control them from within as a sleight of hand. Other than that, Barney has also weaponized a supercomputer on the fate of the Nazi bloodlines that weren't executed, like scientists, doctors, engineers, etc., including the surviving members of the Spookgore family. Barney decided to have a business arrangement with the CIA and KGB to have Nazis exchange their knowledge, information, and files on the scientific, medical, and weapons research they've developed and discovered during World War II, and reverse engineered from Zeta Gray extraterrestrials with both agencies in exchange for their freedom and positions of power in their weapons and research organizations like NASA, DARPA, the CIA, FBI, Department of Justice, Department of Defense, etc. They were also eligible for immigration and employment in any industry despite any potential past associations with the Nazi regime. This business arrangement was known as Operation Paperclip, which went official on July 20, 1945. The scientists brought over through Operation Paperclip included figures like NASA Engineering Program Manager and Chief Architect of the Apollo Saturn V rocket Wernher von Braun, who played a crucial role in the NASA. However, the program also had ethical concerns, as many of the scientists had ties to Nazi war crimes and human experiments in concentration camps. Barney felt it's best to enslave these Nazis and use them as control assets to do his family's bidding and complete his New World Order. Barney casted a spell on the whole U.S. government and their citizens to overlook or downplay these connections in order to acquire the scientists' expertise for national security and Cold War competition, and to cover up the United States government's involvement in covering up the death of Adolf Hitler, also Barney and his family's betrayal to the Jews for unlimited power. Barney Walker is the mastermind behind the Black Rose Society's operations, Helter Skelter, and Grindhouse. The objective of both operations was to infiltrate subculture and pop culture with the development and weaponization of the hippie, civil rights, Pan-African, Rastafarian and truth movements to spread historical and spiritual disinformation and undermine anyone who questions the government since the public relations nightmare of the Korean War being protested by college students all over the United States. The goal of the both operations was the same but different. Operation Helter Skelter was meant to do so but with the use of socially engineered serial killers conditioned by the CIA from Barney Walker's MKUltra operations and targeted the Caucasian race with the use of Charles Manson and Anton Levy. Also to normalize serial killers and have the public slowly gain sympathy with serial killers by weaponizing horror movies and giving serial killers a platform to spread their gross agenda, which ultimately leads to normalizing Satanism into the mainstream media. While Operation Grindhouse targeted ethnic communities with the use of anti-establishment motivated socially engineered religious cult leaders conditioned by the CIA from Barney Walker's MKUltra operations, like Jim Jones. The goal was to label anyone who questions the Walker family's corruption within the CIA and government around as conspiracy theorists. The Hippies was purposely created as a brainchild of Barney Walker's MKUltra operations to make anyone who questioned authority look like unstable, dirty, hedonistic, schizophrenic, crazy, drug addicts. Or they will be publicly assassinated with their legacy ruined. This in turn conditioned the public into thinking only low-life conspiracy theorists questions the government and the media, and be submissive to abuse of human rights and civil liberties. These operations worked very well since Barney was weaponizing capitalism and socialism to its advantage to disenfranchise every human on planet Earth that's not in the elite against each other politically. By February 19, 1967, Barney became an international real estate tycoon and owner of a chain of luxury hotels known as Basic Hotel. With the Basic Hotel, Barney provides a place of sanctuary for Hollywood's elite like Roman Polanski to have their orgies in style and sophistication. However, Barney is using those properties for pedophile entrapment operations and to collect blackmail on Hollywood in order to control Hollywood against his competition in the film industry Jeremy Zudin, CIA operative Eric Zudin's older brother, and label anyone that goes against his MKUltra operations in Hollywood as anti-Semitic, communist homosexuals, pedophiles, and release their blackmail to the media. The Basic Hotel is also used as another money laundering scheme to wash the profits made from the Black Rose Society's drug operations, as well as Barney and Rafael Diaz's child porn operations. Simultaneously, Barney was under investigation by the Treasury Department and Department of Justice Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy Sr. for tax evasion, hiring Latinos with family ties to the Spanish government aristocracy like Virgilio Gonzalez as privateers to wiretap American citizens, funding Viet Cong, the Black Panthers and the Ku Klux Klan, weaponizing the FBI, sleeper agents of the Cuban government and the Black Rose Society to spy on American citizens, running a heroin and human trafficking empire, being a worse extortionist than Yang Cheng, installing communist and fascist sleeper agents related to bad actors of foreign governments in positions of authority in high and low places in all aspects of North American politics and law enforcement, his child porn ring with Rafael Diaz, spying on Jimmy Hoffa for blackmail on the Italian mafia, and funding the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., and Malcolm X. Robert Kennedy and the Kennedy family had a personal vendetta against the Walker family for the murder of John F. Kennedy, doing black magic on the heart of Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., leaking the lobotomy of Rosemary Kennedy to the press as retaliation for John F. Kennedy refusing to be a controlled asset for the CIA and the Black Rose Society, and for assassinating John F. Kennedy for his final speech which he made about secret societies and censorship of the press, which was made out of spite of Barney and his bloodline's wicked occupation of the United States government, and their non-stop abuse and behavioral experiments on citizens of the United States. Since Robert Kennedy Sr. had everything on Barney because of Barney's shut-up spells wearing off, Barney hired a Palestinian nationalist known as Saran Saran to assassinate Robert Kennedy. Barney, who is a proud Zionist, made the assassination look like it was done by a Palestinian to get more public support, sending tax-paying money and American troops to fight on behalf of the Israeli-Palestinian Holy War. In turn, Barney manipulated public consent to gain the funding to start his human trafficking operations in Palestine by using USAID money sent to Israel. After the assassination, Barney was desperate to assassinate Hoffa and get all the files, recordings and tapes he has on everyone in authority. However, when Barney remote viewed Hoffa's files, he found out that Hoffa has everything on Barney Walker due to how the Italian mafia despised doing business with the Walkers since they always fucked them over. Barney later found out both Hoffa and the Italian mob was planning to clap Barney for doing witchcraft on their relationships, funding the Latinos to destabilize Italian mafia operations on American soil, sending the feds on them all, bragging about doing MKUltra on their children, and having enough blackmail on the Walkers because of people in Hollywood had enough of working with Barney's disgusting family and assets of the Black Rose Society. Originally, Jerry Jonas's son Hayden was tasked with assassinating Jimmy Hoffa. However, Jimmy Hoffa publicly threatened to air out Barney Walker's dirty laundry by mentioning having dirt on United States government officials, not just the mafia. On July 30, 1975 at 2:45 p.m., the furious Barney kidnaps Jimmy Hoffa by snatching him by the back of his collar on broomstick, and flew off into the atmosphere. As Barney Walker got to 666 feet into the sky, Barney Walker dropped Jimmy Hoffa over the Atlantic Ocean into the same area where the Titanic sank. When Jimmy Hoffa breaks his legs when he hit the water, Barney zipped down to at least 6 feet above the water, watching Jimmy Hoffa slowly drown to death. Barney and his family happened to be energy vampires that manipulated people's energy and trauma, aka loosh, as a battery to stay energized to do their evil, non-stop. Due to the Kwans being a respected family of witch hunters around the world including Scotland, and the fact that the Walkers look similar to Hector's father's side of the family, the Walker family usually mimics the Kwans' energy and appearance as a form of switch destiny rituals and energetic shape-shifting to embody the Kwan family's energy and traits such as their superhuman invulnerability of superhuman energy levels, spiritual intuition and positive vibrations. Barney and his family was so obsessed with Hector and his family that half of the Black Rose Society including Jeremy Zudin, almost all of the elite bloodlines that run the world, directors and actors that worked on film productions with Hector, and all governments around the world warned the Walkers to leave them alone. Considering the fact that the Kwans are Lemurian, messing with the Kwans would cause a Lemurian war which lead to the extinction of warches, and the exposure of all government secrets around the world due to the amount of evidence Hector collected during every operation him and Kaya ever done for the OSS, CIA, FBI, SOE, NASA, the Department of Defense, and MI6. On top of that, everyone knew the couple wanted to be left alone to live their life in peace unbothered. However, Barney and his family became obsessed with their energy and ended up manipulating every aspect of their life by telepathically spying on and remote viewing the Kwan family non-stop, and torturing them with voodoo dolls and astral projections. The first person to pick up on the Walkers' satanic energy was Hector's and Kaya's son Shen, however they were too busy to look into it even though the couple had picked up on diabolical energy the moment they first met Barney in 1945. Barney had either paid, brainwashed or blackmailed every witch and warlock on planet Earth including all pagans, Wiccans, and warches to overstimulate and confuse Hector and Kaya with non-stop witchcraft and negative energy. That way their intuition is clouded and they are manipulated against the wrong people, including each other. While Kaya Shinkalabwe Kwan was doing bodyguard work for Bob Marley in late 1976, during a Bob Marley concert, Hector Kwan and his son Shen snuck out of the concert to break into Edward Seaga's office for intel on Barney. Hector knew that Edward was in Martin's Black Book of Traitors in power within the United Nations involved in Barney's MK Ultra operations. In Edward's bedroom, Shen finds a photo of Barney being a high priest with his cousin Jimmy Cliff doing obia on photos of the Marley family and family members of the original Wailers band for Edward, as well as the housing blueprints of Jamaican citizens that didn't want to vote for Edward Seaga and that had pedophile blackmail on Jimmy Cliff. The two found out that the housing blueprints is used for them to send monitoring spirits and demons into those households by using gangstalkers to break into their house and plant obia onto their property. Us knowing how Hector is, Hector took pictures of the documents and photos as evidence in case Barney tries to fuck with him and his family. However, Shen found blueprints to all of the hotels they were staying at with each room they were in labeled HK, and found out that Barney and Jimmy Cliff was playing people to put obia in and spit in the food of the Kwans while they stayed in Jamaica working for Bob Marley. Hector was so enraged he wanted to kill everyone involved including the whole JLP and everyone plotting against Bob Marley and his family. However, Shen being a Boy Scout convinced Hector not to. While Hector was taking pictures in Edward Seaga's bedroom, Barney later immediately found out because Jimmy Cliff was spying on the Kwans ever since they stepped foot in Jamaica in 1973 with the use of the police department, every obia worker on the island involved in his operations, and criminals on his payroll. Barney hired Jimmy Cliff and Edward Seaga to stage an assassination on Bob Marley to make it look like a hungry criminal was looking for a name for himself, and to make it a Jamaican citizen to throw off people investigating his use of the CIA and FBI's foreign budget, and also to ruin Kaya's reputation as a bodyguard which would kill her spirit and force her to retire. Edward Seaga and Jimmy Cliff wanted to frame Michael Manley for political reasons, however Barney felt he could get Manley to bend with enough sabotage to his political career by using Henry Kissinger. So Barney was against making it look like a politically motivated assassination. Edward and Jimmy felt embarrassed about being pushed around by some batty-bowie capitalist Scotsman, and wanted to do the operation their own way and teach the Kwans a lesson about the JLP, teaching them a lesson the Kwans will never forget. On December 3, 1976, Edward and Jimmy sent multiple CIA-hired assassins and every gunman in Jamaica desperate to get at Bob Marley to raid his household with multiple shots being fired. The two wanted everyone in that house dead, while Barney only wanted Bob Marley, Hector and her son Shen. Edward and Jimmy made a tactical fuck-up which was they were bragging all over town about killing the Kwans because they are batty-bowie capitalist, and there was so much gunfire the battle led into the streets of Jamaica, leaving behind Kaya to get Bob and Rita to a safe house. The next morning the Kwans left Jamaica, however Barney was furious by having his leadership challenged by his subordinates and decided to put Edward Seaga's name all over CIA documents of the CIA's plan to destabilize Jamaica to avoid Jamaica from being another communist nation like Cuba. During the Apollo 17 mission of December 1972, Barney got Richard a job as a mission controller. After the attempted assassination of Bob Marley, Richard Loomis became a quartermaster for the CIA, while Barney became the director of the CIA, which gave Barney unlimited diplomatic immunity to get away with his criminal operations. Barney Walker is the most wicked villain of Gascon fiction Gen 1 and Gen 2 and usually acts as a false opposition sleight of hand with loyalty only towards himself and the legacy of his bloodline. Barney Walker's natal chart is Sun in Aries, Moon in Libra, and Scorpio rising. Barney Walker's main arm is his Hollywood wand. Yang Cheng, codename Solar Monitor. Yang Cheng was born in Chicago, Illinois on August 4, 1898. Yang Cheng was born an only child to philanthropist parents of a family of Chinese diplomats. The origin of their family's wealth comes from the notorious pirate known as Shi Yang aka Qing Shi. Yang Cheng's grandmother on his father's side, Shi Yang was a Chinese pirate leader active in the South China Sea from 1801 to 1810. Due to her years of internationally plundering a violently enormous amount of natural resources such as copper, silk, gold, platinum, iron, wheat, spices, steel, dynamite, brass, gunpowder, coal, bronze, weapons, nitroglycerin, acid, plutonium and uranium ores, when Shi Yang was caught, she was not only able to buy her way into being pardoned for her crimes, but buying China and the rest of the governments of Asia. This resulted in the rest of her whole family inheriting the world's biggest surplus of the aforementioned natural resources. During an arms-dealing trip to Beijing on September 4, 1901, Yang Cheng's parents was arming the Boxer army with weapons and a black book of Chinese Christians and turncoats for the Eight-Nation Alliance. Days after the deal on September 7, Yang Cheng's parents and everyone involved in the arms deal was snitched on by gunpowder competitor Zidane Chua, Eric Zidane's uncle, and the Boxer Protocol aka the Shin-Cho Treaty was signed. As retaliation, the Vatican, the Queen of England, the Jonas family, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire ordered to have Yang Cheng's parents and everyone involved publicly executed by only white soldiers of the Eight-Nation Alliance by being burned alive, leaving Yang Cheng an orphan. Feeling betrayed by his own people and traumatized by Caucasians and Christianity for the murder of his parents, Yang Cheng vowed to spend the rest of his life making white people suffer and the Asian race enslaved for failing to do nothing about Christianity infecting the East, and whitewashing his culture. Yang Cheng does this while pretending to be a revolutionary similar to an Asian doppelganger to the former governor of Chihuahua Francisco Villa for the civil rights of Asians against Western colonization and imperialism. Former governor of Chihuahua, Mexico Francisco Villa aka Pancho Villa is one of Yang Cheng's many idols next to Marquis de Sade, the dogmeat general of Shandong, China, Zhang Zongcheng, and Emperor Yang of the Chinese Sui dynasty of China, which began in August 21, 604 and ended April 11, 618. Yang Cheng conjures their spirit energy to empower his own with witchcraft. Since being orphaned, the rest of Yang Cheng's family was killed off both by the Eighth Nation Alliance and Yang Cheng himself. Yang Cheng killed off his own bloodline for human sacrifices as well as to be the only beneficiary of his grandmother's inheritance. Due to this, Yang was officially the world's richest man. The Spookgore family was the world's richest family as of 1945 and had a family of 20,000 members, each not as rich as Yang Cheng. On December 23, 1913, Yang Cheng decided to get training from the Lemurian Academy to perfect his mind, body, and martial arts abilities. Usually those that are not Lemurian are prohibited from these teachings due to it being used for evil intentions by non-Lemurians. However, Yang Cheng provided too much natural resources for 4 of the 9 members of the head council to refuse. Yang Cheng was given way too much access to sacred Lemurian crystals and elemental manipulation abilities. Other members of the council found out about the 4 members teaching Yang Cheng in secret and giving a diabolical non-Lemurian access to sacred martial arts and crystals storing Earth's history and the secrets of the universe, and the 4 Lemurians that sold out were excommunicated from the Lemurian Council. Those 4 excommunicated Lemurians started a separate sect of Lemurians which are known as rogues. Yang decided to give the rogues work and decided to take care of them as long as they make hell on humanity and have fun doing it, while helping with his own New World Order agenda. Yang's goal was to network for his dream project which was known as Unit 731, and to make Asia and the West 100% communist. Even though Yang Cheng had a love for science and genetics, he became a mercenary from 1920 to 1940. On Christmas Day 1937, Yang Cheng met Hector Quan in China while being in the same squadron during a tactical withdrawal operation during the Nanking Massacre. The experience they had together was hell on earth for Hector, but an orgasmic adrenaline rush of non-stop bloodshed for Yang Cheng, who often loved to use Chinese little girls as bait for Japanese soldiers, which Hector had to end up breaking Yang Cheng's arm for almost getting an 3-year-old sodomized by a Japanese imperial soldier because Yang Cheng drenched her clothes in pheromones for bait. Regardless of what anyone thinks of Yang Cheng's ways, Yang Cheng feels children is the best weapon for any form of warfare. The experience in Nanking was so fun for Yang Cheng. Yang Cheng decided to be an instigator by funding the Chinese and Japanese government's atrocities against each other and their own civilians. After World War II started, Yang Cheng's narcissism and megalomania gotten out of control, and Yang Cheng was officially drawn to using children in his operations. Yang Cheng decided to launch a pedophile blackmail operation on world leaders and members of the military, board of education, union leaders, law enforcement, government, and Hollywood in order to have ownership of the central bank and the Federal Reserve. Yang Cheng's natal chart is top secret. However, it's rumored by Hector Kwan and Martin Loomis based on Yang Cheng's OSS file. Yang Cheng's sun, moon, and rising placements are all in the sign of Leo. Eva Braun, codename Das Rob. Eva Braun was born on February 6, 1912 in Munich, Germany. Eva is Adolf Hitler's mistress and witch. Unlike Adolf Hitler, Eva is a full-blooded witch, which means Eva doesn't have to perform human and animal sacrifices in order to access her supernatural abilities unless to amplify her energy for a specific mass ritual. Eva's job is to make sure Hitler's operation to introduce communist values, homosexuality, opioid abuse, and the destruction of the nuclear family unit in the Black, Native, Jewish, Hispanic, and Asian American community via Operation Sybil Shepherd is a success. Hitler's identity is never compromised, keeping Jewish Nazi hunters sent by the Loomis and Walker family off their trail, infiltrate and subvert the way of life and national security of the United States of America with Nazi sleeper cells via hypnosis, witchcraft, and being in charge of Hitler's genetic experiments. Eva Braun's natal chart is Sun in Aquarius, Moon in Virgo, and Scorpio rising. Fun fact: Eva Braun has the same birthday as Ronald Reagan. Jeb Spook Gore, codename The Count. Jeb Spook Gore is an industrialist from the aristocratic banking family known as the Spook Gore family of Lemberg, Austro-Hungarian Empire, modern-day Lviv, Ukraine. The Spook Gore family is a family of subterrestrial species known as warchas, warlocks and witches that look like humans but are subterrestrial humanoids with the natural ability to control the supernatural and all things involving witchcraft without the use of doing human sacrifices. That's been secretly pulling the strings of planet Earth since the days of Atlantis. Jeb Spook Gore created and funded the Nazis, aka the National Socialist German Workers' Party, in order to gain full control of the world and to exterminate Jews, blacks, and subterrestrial humanoids they view as competition to completing the Spook Gore's satanic world order, as well as to collect the energy of as much pain, trauma, and death from the world's population as a form of energy harvesting, which they call loosh, from the use of genocide, propaganda, and race wars. Jeb Spook Gore is also the father of Adolf Hitler. The Spook Gores is also in competition with the Loomis family of England, technology, scientific and medical industrial complex, Aho family of Nigeria, automobile and prison industrial complex, the Jonas family of Germany, media and military industrial complex, the Zhu Dan family of China, Hollywood and technology industrial complex, and another family of warchas known as the Walker family, weapons industrial complex, of Scotland, who hates the Spook Gores and their quest of depopulation. The Spook Gore family is of 1945 is the world's richest family that produces metal, beer, plastic, gold, wool, water, rum, rubber, industrial consolidation, and runs the world's financial system simultaneously with the Jonas family. However, the Spook Gores and the Jonas family were fighting over control of the banking system. Jeb Spook Gore's natal chart is Sun in Cancer, Moon in Leo, and Cancer rising. Jerry Jonas, codename Mars Komodo. Jerry Jonas is the American-born son of German multimedia mogul Archibald Archie Jonas, who owned 10% of the military-industrial complex and 10% of the prison-industrial complex. Jerry's family is also the world's biggest producers of sugar, and owns the education and banking system, the Federal Reserve and the central banking system like the Spook Gores. However, the Jonas family owns most of the banking system. Jerry has a younger sister by 2 years named Helena, who is an investigative journalist for Time magazine. Due to nepotism, Jerry immediately got a job as a commanding officer and part-time field agent for the OSS, since Archie is best friends and drinking buddies with William J. Donovan and John L. Magruder. The Jonas family was chased out of Germany due to the Spook Gore family inventing the National Socialist German Workers' Party, aka the Nazis, as a flex against other elite bloodlines that run the world. Because of this, and the Spook Gore's ties to Yang Cheng, the Jonas family did everything in their power to exterminate the Third Reich and to take down the blackmail operations of Yang Cheng. In December of 1941, Archie's mental health started rapidly declining, and Archie started to gain up to 666 pounds in weight, due to Yang Cheng and the Spook Gore family's black magic. This ended up in Archie being forced by his own family to be a recluse, only to travel on secret between the hours of 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., in order to save the family's public image. Archie's wife Stella became the public face of the Jonas dynasty, while Jerry and Helena are the fixers in case of a scandal breaking out. Jerry Jonas's natal chart is Sun in Sagittarius, Moon in Gemini, and Leo rising. Harvard Xanthus, codename Golden Judas. Harvard Xanthus was born in Athens, Greece on October 26, 1901 and is a member of the Xanthus family dynasty. The Xanthus family is a family of Greek industrialists which provides technology, steamboats, aviation, sonar, railroads, and as of 1936 nuclear energy from the supply from green lighting industries, the Loomis families, and United States military's plutonium and uranium ore supply in the Shinkolobwe region of the Congo. Harvard is the nephew of head family patriarch Daedalus Xanthus. Harvard decided to be a spy for fascist Italy during Benito Mussolini's reign in 1923. Harvard's main objective was to infiltrate and subvert intel on Ethiopian way of life and the leadership of Emperor Haile Selassie I, in order to find an Achilles heel in the national security of Ethiopia for fascist Italy and Nazi Germany to invade. The purpose of the invasion was to steal Ethiopia's gold supply by weakening Ethiopia's economy, national security, and the morale of Ethiopian citizens. This in turn would economically destabilize Ethiopia's government, which in turn would lead to Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy installing political puppets implanted within the Ethiopian government, terraforming Ethiopia into turning into a territory of Fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, while both countries split the gold they stolen. Another reason for their African campaign was to wipe out all traces of Judaism in Africa with genocides and the destruction of historical landmarks. However, Harvard got ambushed by Hector Kwan on the way to smuggling raw gold and intel on Haile Selassie to the Vatican, after Hector got paid in gold by Haile Selassie himself, Archie Jonas and Martin Loomis. Hector's methods of interrogation left Harvard severely traumatized, which led to Harvard losing respect from his superiors in the Italian government, Mussolini himself, and the Vatican just because Harvard is black. The Italian Secret Service fired Harvard in 1936, the Xanthus family disowned him and he was deported back to Greece. Since then, Harvard was personally handpicked by Yang Cheng to be a pilot of the Fufu Express due to Harvard's resentment and ties to the Vatican, Harvard's own family, and white people. Also for all the government secrets Harvard has on Italy, Greece, Ethiopia, and Germany, that's a massive threat to the national security of those nations. Harvard Xanthos's natal chart is Sun in Scorpio, Moon in Aries and Gemini rising. Matteo Danvers, codename Muddy Barracuda. Matteo Danvers was born on October 27, 1895 in Madrid, Spain. Matteo comes from a family of Spaniard diplomats known as the Danvers family. The Danvers family is the world's biggest producers of perfume, cosmetics, fur, since the 1477, starting off manufacturing wigs, perfume, and makeup for Queen Isabella I of Castile. 1 year later, the Danvers family is also notorious for supplying the Spanish government and Spanish royalty with building the torture devices and chambers to be used for the Spanish Inquisition. Matteo was raised in Brooklyn since the age of 3 until the age of 18, which he became a privateer and fixer for Rafael Sanchez Guerra until 1940. In the 1940s, Matteo was a bodyguard for Joseph Goebbels. However, in 1945, Matteo had a violent encounter with Hector Kwan in Joseph Goebbels' underground bunker. That encounter permanently disabled the way Matteo walked, and left Matteo bald for the rest of his life. Since then, Matteo retired privateer work to be personally hand-picked by Yang Cheng, a pilot for Yang's Fufu Express, due to Matteo's experience for being a cutthroat mercenary with zero empathy and compassion. Also for Matteo's ties to the Spanish aristocracy. Matteo Danvers's natal chart is Sun in Scorpio, Moon in Aquarius and Pisces rising.
Otis Delgado Diaz was born July 24, 1898 in Sussex, United Kingdom. He is the firstborn son of two, which includes his younger brother, Rafael. Rafael is younger than him by 8 years. Otis's father, Monserrate Diaz Rivera Gomez, is a sugarcane and olive plantation owner, while his mother, Valentina Rivera Sanchez Vasquez, is the world's biggest producer of soda and cocoa. The couple originally had a child before Otis known as Ignacio. However, Ignacio was sacrificed as a moonchild to give birth to Otis. The Diaz bloodline is another bloodline of watches that runs the world. However, the Diaz family is a family of half-blood watches mixed with Atlantean genetics and often procreate with humans to have their family have influence over humanity via their sleeper cells, law enforcement officials, and gatekeepers of culture and religion. The Diaz family archives span at least thousands of years due to their ties to the Noah's Ark Atlantean watch affair that led to the sinking of Atlantis. The Diaz family originates from the tribe of Judah, directly related to Judas Iscariot. Their family influence gained power over the years, due to them being used as magical mercenaries, often only accepting commissions strictly in gold. Gold is an energetic property used to enhance and modify their witchcraft and supernatural abilities, while they use gemstones to modify, alter, or manipulate the energies of people, places, and things. During the times of Atlantis, the Spookgore family was doing trade deals with the Atlanteans for resources. However, the Atlanteans realized the Spookagores was good with their sorcery and wanted them to help modify the technology of Atlantis. In exchange for resources, the Spookgores wanted influence and housing in Atlantis. After the deal was made, the Spookgores and Diazes, historically mercenaries for the Spookgore family, interbreeded with the Atlanteans, and their offspring had positions of power in Atlantis. Over time, Atlantis became corrupted and was a society based on satanic, technocratic supremacy. This alerted the attention of Noah, a Lemurian from Armenia, who kept getting psychic visions of the wickedness and plots the Atlanteans and Watchers had for humanity. This led Noah to see for himself what was going on in Atlantis. Noah tried to warn humanity, but he had no proof, and everyone took him for a madman. The Lemurian Council in Lemuria wanted to let the situation ride out due to God telling them the flood must happen to kill out the Nephilims and satanic bloodlines on the planet. Noah felt bad due to the civilian casualties it would bring to humanity, but Noah had no choice but to fend for himself and allow humanity to drown in their ignorance. Due to the Diaz and Spookgores meddling in the affairs of Atlantean society, by using trade deals as a Trojan horse for colonization, led to the ultimate destruction of Atlantis. This also resulted in Lemuria being destroyed, causing Lemurians to move their civilization in the mountains of Mount Shasta. This is where the Lemurian Council is currently located. Due to being descendants of the Visigoths and their stockpile of gold, the Diaz family eventually took over Spanish rule during the 7th century. The Diaz family shares control over Spain with the Danavers family, a human family of cosmetic, makeup, and perfume tycoons, and is also married into each other's family since the 7th century to keep their money strictly in the family and in Spain. Their goal was to turn Spain into a superpower to compete with the Roman Empire. The Diaz and Danavers family are obsessed and very jealous of the Romans and Italians' influence and power over the world, and often sabotages the Vatican with the use of their family members in the Vatican sabotaging things, as well as having anti-papals like Gil Sanchez Munoz, a.k.a. Clement VIII, in their family to gain influence over the Vatican in certain regions of the world. During the early 7th century, Count Julian, a Byzantine governor, invited the Moors to intervene in the Visigoth civil war in 711 AD by requesting military aid from Tariq ibn Ziyad, a Berber commander in North Africa. Count Julian wanted revenge against Visigoth King Roderick, a Diaz descendant, because he dishonored Count Julian by raping and impregnating his daughter, Florinda La Cava, whom was sent to King Roderick's court at Toledo for education. This betrayal of trust prompted Count Julian, the governor of Ceuta, to facilitate the Muslim invasion of Spain in 711 to overthrow Roderick. Tariq ibn Ziyad led the force, acting under the authority of Musa ibn Nusayr, the Umayyad governor of North Africa. The Moors' tactics led to the Visigothic kingdom being divided, allowing Tariq and his army, mostly Berbers, to cross the Strait of Gibraltar and decisively defeat King Roderick at the Battle of Guadalete in 711. Tariq took advantage of the situation of the civil war in the Visigoth kingdom as political chaos and internal disputes among the ruling Visigoths, which made Spain look weak to the Moors. Yet Spain as a nation had an abundance of wealth, urban centers, agriculture, and the Spanish terrain wasn't prepared for Moorish-style warfare. This initiated the Reconquista, a centuries-long campaign by Christian kingdoms to reclaim the peninsula, culminating in the 1492 fall of Granada, often traced back to the Battle of Covadonga, circa 718 to 722, where Pelayo a Visigoth nobleman, secured a Christian victory in the mountains of Asturias. This battle marked the start of the Christian resistance. However, the Moors ended up ruling Spain for over 800 years until the final phase of the war, which was between the years 1481 to 1492. This final phase, known as the Granada War, was driven by the desire of Ferdinand and Isabella to unify Spain under Catholic rule and eliminate the final Muslim-held territory. The prolonged conflict was largely driven by a desire for territorial recovery by Christian rulers and religious differences, culminating in the total expulsion of Muslim rulers from Iberia. Towards the end of the Reconquista in 1492, the Diaz family and the Spanish government decided to get their revenge on the Moors and expand their territory. Spain officially hired a Sephardic Jewish mercenary, Christopher Columbus, in April 1492 through the capitulations of Santa Fe, signed by Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand. Born to a family of wool weavers in Genoa, Italy. Due to the Diaz family secretly knowing that Christopher Columbus was hiding his Jewish identity because of the Inquisition, the Diaz family nominated his services to the King and Queen of Spain as a control asset to the monarch. After years of rejection, the Spanish monarchs agreed to sponsor his voyage to find a westward route to Asia, granting him the titles of Admiral, Viceroy, and Governor. Sponsored by the Crown, Columbus set sail with his ships, the Niña, Pinta, and Santa Maria, on August 3rd, 1492. Supervising Columbus was all the bloodlines related to and married into the Diaz and Danovas family. The deal for the lick was the capitulations of Santa Fe, April 1492, promised Columbus 10% of all profits from his discoveries, alongside noble titles mentioned previously. The Vatican officially granted the New World to Spain through the papal bull Inter Caetera, issued by Pope Alexander VI on May 4th, 1493. This decree established a line of demarcation in the Atlantic Ocean, giving Spain exclusive rights to colonize lands west of that line, effectively dividing non-Christian lands between Spain and Portugal. Following Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492, Spain sought papal legitimacy for its claims. In response to the plot, the Inter Caetera authorized Spain to colonize the Americas, convert the indigenous, and trade of natural resources, establishing a demarcation line 100 leagues west of the Azores and Cape Verde Islands. In 1493, the decree was later modified by the Treaty of Tordesillas, 1494, a diplomatic agreement between Spain and Portugal, approved by the Pope, which moved the line further west, granting Portugal modern-day Brazil while leaving the rest of the Americas to Spain. That decree allowed for the colonization, conversion, and enslavement of the Americas to enhance Spanish rule over the Americas. During Christopher Columbus's second voyage, the Diaz family demanded Columbus to stop at an island known as Waitukubuli, aka the Commonwealth of Dominica, one of few Caribbean islands never conquered by the Spanish. The Diaz family detected a strong, energetic detection of gold on the island. The whole crew was ready to raid the island, however they met with the Kalinago. They stayed only long enough to realize there were no resources deemed valuable unless they dig deep under the ground, which would be impossible to do without encountering the local population, who immediately started attacking the Diaz family, Columbus, and the rest of their mercenaries. The Kalinago people of the Eastern Caribbean, and specifically those in Dominica, were known for their ruthless and violent resistance to outsiders, and brutal combatants with cannibalistic tendencies. It's believed Columbus and his crew had their work worst experience in the Americas dealing with the Kalinago in Dominica. Columbus claimed ownership of Jamaica in 1494. The Spanish exploited existing rivalries, notably pitting the Taíno, an Arawak subgroup, against the Caribs, and using indigenous auxiliaries to aid their conquests. Spanish colonial strategies included forcing indigenous people into the encomienda system, causing a massive population to decline through overwork, brutal violence, and disease, rather than just pitting Arawak groups against each other. The Spanish targeted indigenous leaders, often replacing them with more submissive chiefs to reduce cohesive resistance. By kidnapping, restricting movement, and forcing labor in mines, the Spanish crippled the ability of Taíno and Arawak groups to coordinate resistance by kidnapping, restricting movement, and forcing labor in mines. Although the Spanish used various indigenous groups against one another to facilitate their dominion, the overarching destruction of the Taíno was a result of colonial violence and enslavement. The Taíno genocide was committed against the Taíno indigenous people by the Spanish during their colonization of the Caribbean during the 16th century. The population of the Taíno, before the arrival of the Spanish Empire on the island of Quisqueya, or Haiti, in 1492, which Christopher Columbus named Hispaniola, present-day Haiti, and the Dominican Republic, is estimated to be between 10,000 to 1 million deaths. Following the deposition of the last Taíno chief in 1504, the Spanish began subjecting the local population to slavery, massacres, sexual slavery of the women and children, and other forms of violence. The Spanish transatlantic slave trade began in the early 16th century, with the first enslaved Africans arriving in the Spanish Americas, Hispaniola, around 1502 to 1505. Following Columbus's voyages, Spanish conquistadors brought enslaved Africans to the Caribbean to replace rapidly dying indigenous populations. State-authorized escalation occurred on August 18th, 1518, when Emperor Charles V granted a charter allowing direct transport of enslaved people from Africa to the Americas. King Charles I authorized direct Africa to Caribbean voyages, accelerating the pace of the trade. Spain often used a contract system known as the asiento, allowing merchants from other countries, like Portugal, to sell enslaved people in Spanish territories. Even though Portugal dominated the early trade starting from at least 1481, Spain remained a major participant, with significant imports of enslaved people into the Caribbean throughout the 16th century. By the mid-1520s, Spain had already taken over the Caribbean except for Dominica, and ravaged Central America with the use of Hernán Cortés, and South America with the use of the Pizarro brothers. The Spanish started hearing rumors from both the indigenous and their own kind about the legend of El Dorado. The legend is inspired by the culture of the Muisca, an indigenous people who inhabited a plateau in the Andean Mountains in present-day Colombia. Each time a new leader, or Zipa, was crowned, their body was covered in gold dust, and offerings were transported along to the depths of Lake Guatavita, invoking the goddess who inhabited the lake. This ritual was known as the Muisca Golden Ceremony. The Muisca were skilled goldsmiths. They made frequent use of golden objects in their religious ceremonies, and also manufactured ornaments and jewelry for trade with the neighboring tribes. Early European settlers, searching for the source of the gold they found among the lowland inhabitants, made several attempts to reach the plateau. The first to succeed was Diaz family member Gonzalo Jiménez de Quesada Rivera in 1537. Quesada and his men conquered the territory of the Muisca in the name of Spain and looted large quantities of gold from their palaces and temples. The Diaz family was funneling gold trafficking operations out of the Caribbean from their slave operations. These countries in the Caribbean with gold deposits include Dominican Republic, Haiti, Guyana, and Suriname. The Dominican Republic is home to the Pueblo Viejo mine, one of the region's largest gold producers. Others include Cuba and Jamaica. These two nations possess geological formations containing gold, with historical mining activities. Due to the decline of the indigenous population via germ warfare, also known as the quilts and the blankets, a tactic the Spanish was notorious for using against their targets of oppression, and chemical warfare, the Spanish introduced enslaved Africans to the island. Most of these slaves were imported illegally, as the Spanish crown did not prioritize licenses, asientos, for Jamaica. The scale was smaller compared to later British rule, with a maximum slave population of around 1,000 to 1,500 by 1655. The economy relied more on ranching than sugar, and many Spanish owners lacked the capital to hold large numbers of enslaved people. Besides, Maximilian Delgado Diaz, who was a sugarcane plantation tycoon. When the British brought smoke to the Spanish and hit a lick on Jamaica in 1655, many Spanish colonists fled, leaving their enslaved Africans behind. These enslaved people fled into the mountainous interior, establishing free communities that became known as the Maroons from the Spanish Cimarrones, resisting both the Spanish and later the British colonizers, especially those from the Walker family. The British, with the help of the Walker family, took over Jamaica in 1655 and immediately transitioned the island towards an intensive sugar plantation economy, exponentially increasing the demand for enslaved African labor. The Diaz family made a deal with the Walker family to traffic their slaves for them in exchange for a stake in their development of the town known as Port Royal. Port Royal were English and Dutch government-sponsored privateers who were encouraged to attack Spanish vessels at a time when many European nations were reluctant to attack the powerful Spanish fleet directly. However, the Diaz family owns the Spanish government, so they didn't care about what the monarch thought, since they were the ones funneling all the gold back to Spain. As a port city, it was notorious for its flossy displays of wealth and barbaric lifestyle, with the privateer spending their booty in the taverns, gambling houses, and brothels, which catered to them. When the British and Dutch governments officially abandoned the practice of issuing letters of marque to privateers against the Spanish treasure fleets and possessions in South America in the later 16th century, many of the crews turned pirate to allow themselves to maintain their plundering illegally, including the Walker family, who is also supplying gold to the English monarch, so who dared questions them? Port Royal, under the Walker and Diaz family occupation, effectively became a pirate republic and continued to use the city as their modern-day Babylon during the 17th century. Pirates from around the world congregated at Port Royal, coming from waters as far away as Madagascar. Port Royal had so much gold, the Walker and Diaz occupation brought both the British and Spanish governments so much gold, it allowed for both governments to expand their power internationally. However, at 11:43 a.m., June 7th, 1692, Port Royal sank due to a massive 7.5 magnitude earthquake, and then a subsequent tsunami struck the island minutes after. The disaster caused soil liquefaction, causing roughly 2/3 of the city, about 33 acres, to sink beneath the sea with all its gold, instantly killing 2,000 people. A massive portion of the wickedest city on earth was submerged, creating a sunken archaeological site now located 20 to 40 feet underwater. The Diaz family detected an energy source of gold in the Philippines and decided to hire a force of mercenaries to take over. Before Spanish colonization, the Philippines was a land of gold, with indigenous society societies using it extensively in daily life, clothing, and rituals. Spanish colonizers seized, melted down, and exported vast quantities of this, along with other treasures, between the 16th and 19th centuries, turning ancestral wealth into colonial capital. Gold was found throughout the archipelago, particularly in Butuan, with items like jewelry, utensils, and decorations being commonplace. Upon arrival, Spaniards destroyed native villages and seized gold, viewing it as booty. Many, but not all, of these artifacts were melted into bars for transport to Spain. While not as voluminous as South American silver, Filipino gold and other precious metals were part of the wealth transported via the Manila-Acapulco galleon trade. The Spanish encouraged the mining of gold, which remained a significant industry during colonial rule. Spain began colonizing the Philippines and imposing forced labor systems in 1565, following Miguel López de Legazpi's arrival. While direct slavery was technically outlawed, Spaniards utilized the encomienda system to force natives into labor, a practice that persisted for decades during the 333-year colonial period, 1565 to 1898. Before 1565, a local form of servitude existed, but Spanish colonization significantly expanded and shifted the nature of this exploitation. While slavery was eventually prohibited, the exploitation of Filipinos continued through various coerced labor systems until the end of Spanish rule in 1898. Simultaneously, in the year 1565, the Spanish took over most of North America, starting with Florida, Louisiana, California, Texas, and New Mexico. However, Louisiana at the time covered most of Middle America. Years later, during the American Revolution, the Diaz family knew a rebellion was going to happen that the British wouldn't win. So they decided to start having their sleeper cells fund militias against the Redcoats. Spain provided significant financial aid, loans, and military supplies to the American Revolution, roughly between the years 1775 to 1783, via Diego de Gardoqui. The Diaz family made Spain send cash, clothing, and gunpowder to support the colonies against Britain, with significant funds supporting the 1781 Yorktown campaign, securing early American independence. They also did this to be petty with the Walkers for taking over the North American East Coast. Spain declared war on Britain in 1779, with leaders like Bernardo de Galvez capturing key flags in Florida and the Mississippi Valley, aiding the U.S. in the South. While some interaction continued in the 1790s, the major financial support occurred during the war, which wrapped up in the early 1780s. However, the War of 1812 happened, which was a war United States and Great Britain had between 1812 to 1815, often called the Second War for Independence. Driven by disputes over maritime trade rights, the impressment of American sailors into the Royal Navy, and British support for Native American resistance, the U.S. declared war to defend its sovereignty. Despite a violent deadlock that included the burning of Washington, D.C., the war ended in a draw, fostering American nationalism and securing the nation's independence. Spain's primary objective in the War of 1812 was to maintain its neutrality and defend its colonial territories, particularly Florida, from American expansionism. As a British ally in the simultaneous Napoleonic Wars, Spain allowed British troops to use its ports, aiming to secure its vulnerable territory despite a strained relationship with the United States. Spain aimed to prevent the U.S. from seizing control of West and East Florida, which was a clear target for American territorial expansion. Spain struggled to protect its territory and was forced to allow the British to use Pensacola as a military base to counter American actions in the Gulf region. Due to the Napoleonic Wars, Spain was brutally weakened, leading to a largely passive approach to the US-British conflict. Ultimately, the war accelerated the decline of Spanish influence, resulting in the US annexing parts of West Florida and setting the stage for the United States government's full acquisition of Florida in 1819. In the late 1890s, the United States wanted to go after Spanish territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, Philippines, and Cuba. President McKinley was given word by the Walker family that all those countries Spain owns is on top of a stockpile of gold. McKinley originally wanted to liberate Cuba and sought a peaceful resolution, but moved toward military intervention to promote humanitarianism, protect economic interests, and secure Cuban independence. This would put an end to the barbarities, bloodshed, starvation, and horrible miseries caused by Spain's reconcentrado policy, and to take over Cuba for commercial interest. However, Bartholomew Walker hexed the ammunition on board with chaos magic, causing it to ignite, killing 252 people on board. McKinley knew that the Walkers' political influence set him up into a territory war with the Diaz family, and had no choice but to go to war, or look like he himself rigged the USS Maine to explode. In 1901, the Walkers and the Diaz family put a spell on an anarchist by the name of Leon Czolgosz to assassinate President McKinley with a .32 caliber Ivor Johnson revolver point blank into the president's abdomen. This was to cut loose ends on both bloodlines' behalf. Even though the Diaz family took a blow from losing their territory to the Walker-owned United States government, they still had a stockpile of gold from their previous conquest, own all of the soda companies in the United States due to them owning the sugar industry with their sugarcane plantations, and their sleeper cells in countries all over the world. The Diazes even had it to where they were copying the Walkers' tactic of sneaking gold out of Fort Knox. The Walkers did it for the Bank of England, while the Diaz family did it for the Spanish monarch. In the 1930s, Spain was in a political turmoil due to the rise of communism and socialism in a historically fascist country. Diaz, relative José Antonio Primo de Rivera, from the Sephardic Jewish side of the Diaz family, started Falangism, a fascist, national syndicalist movement designed to counter political instability, communism, and liberalism of Spain's Second Republic. It sought to unite the nation through a strong, authoritarian state that rejected class struggle and promoted a national syndicalist economy, merging worker and employer interests. The Rivera's movement was heavily influenced by Mussolini's Italian fascism and German Nazism, sharing similar beliefs in the supremacy of the nation and a state-run, corporatist economy. With Rivera's 27-point system, his manifesto called for a social revolution, promoting agrarian reform, industrial expansion, and the abolition of political parties. Rivera's movement targeted an abundance of different demographics, including women's liberation movements, in which they attacked feminists and women seeking social/political liberation, attempting to limit women's roles to traditional and state-serving roles. Targeted socialists, communists, and anarchists for destroying national unity and fostering class struggles. Jews. The Phalange viewed the Jews, or in their terms, the Judeo-Masonic International, as a core enemy responsible for creating capitalism and Marxism. Phalangists, under Primo de Rivera, acts of corporate and criminal espionage and sabotage of Jewish interests, businesses, and social functions, such as the 1935 attacks on the Jewish-owned SEPU department stores. Spain and the Phalange used anti-Semitic rhetoric to target their political enemies, despite the lack of a large domestic Jewish population, as well as the Rivera family, being a family of Jews. Rivera also was the brainchild of making the TMZ of anti-Semitism in Spain during World War II, known as Arriba newspaper, which frequently promoted the idea that Jews, through a Judeo-Masonic Bolshevist conspiracy, were responsible for Spain's political issues. Phalangism and the Francoist regime in Spain also violently repressed Freemasons, regarding Freemasons as another Judeo-Masonic conspiracy responsible for the country's social evils. Following the 1939 rise of Francisco Franco, Freemasonry was banned, and the regime established a special tribunal to imprison or execute members of Freemasonry known as the Age of the White Terror, 1936 to 1947. The Tribunal for the Eradication of Freemasonry and Communism, established in 1940, was created specifically to eliminate the Freemason organization. All Freemasonry was officially banned, lodges closed, and their property and archives were seized. Freemasons were also a big-time target of the Arriba newspaper. Even though the whole Rivera family themselves are Freemasons with Jewish blood, anyone that challenged the Riveras usually were framed into being subjects of the White Terror, with evidence planted on anyone who stands up against the oppression of the Rivera family. The Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939, was caused by intense polarization between left-wing and right-wing factions, escalating from a failed military coup against the democratically elected Second Republic. Deep social, religious, and economic divisions, combined with fears of communist revolution or fascist dictatorship, prompted nationalist rebels to act. The botched coup failed to take over the entire country, resulting in a 3-year war, with supporters of the coup known as nationalists and defenders of the Republic known as Republicans. During the war, Hitler decided to aid Spain with military aid and support for Spanish nationalists. Although Spain was fascist, they were forced to remain neutral due to being dependent on oil imports from the US and UK, aka the Walker's family's oil, and did not want Spain to have their food imports blockaded by the Walker-owned Royal British Navy. While Hitler pressured Spain to enter the war, Franco demanded more resources than Germany could spare. The Diaz family couldn't afford to go to fund the war by themselves, since the Danovers family wanted to be strictly neutral and preferred to watch from the sidelines. Spain was also crippled by their 3-year civil war, lacking the military hardware and resources to join a global conflict. However, the Diaz family found multiple loopholes around the Walkers and the Allies to be indirectly Axis. Spain allowed German submarines to resupply in its ports and supported the Nazis with intel and materials. The Diazes then allowed for Franco permit Spanish volunteers, the Division Azul, aka the Blue Division, to fight specifically against the Soviet Union, starting in 1941, fulfilling a desire to combat communism without formally declaring war on the Western Allies. In June 1940, Spain seized the neutral Tangier International Zone using 4,000 soldiers from Spanish Morocco, an occupation that lasted until 1945. Although used as another tactic to get back at the Moors, they really wanted to advance their occupation to Guelmim, Morocco. However, Guelmim was under French occupation. The plan the Diaz family made with Adolf Hitler and the Spookgore family was, once the Nazis advanced into occupying France, they had an official occupation of Guelmim and their gold ores, and split the gold ores with the Diaz family and the Spanish government. Discoveries in the southern Guelmim have identified significant deposits with concentrations of 6 to 30 grams per ton, indicating Morocco has discovered high-grade gold in the Guelmim region, and the country holds 22.12 tons of gold reserves in its central bank, with mining activity concentrated in regions like the Anti-Atlas. Today, the Moroccan central bank maintains 22.12 tons of gold reserves. During World War II, the country was controlled by the pro-Nazi Vichy French regime from 1940 to November 1942. While anti-Jewish decrees were enforced and labor camps existed in the Sahara, Sultan Mohammed V resisted, preventing the deportation of Moroccan Jews to death camps. In November 1942, Operation Torch liberated Morocco, placing it under Allied control and ending Vichy influence. This situation caused trouble for both the Spanish and the Nazis, and they had to haul ass out of Guelmim and call it a loss. When the Walker family found out about the Diaz family playing them for the Spookagors and Nazi Germany, the Walker family forced the OSS and United States military to launch Operation Torch in 1942. The Walkers had United States personnel land in French Morocco, smuggle some tons of gold left behind from the Diaz Spook-Gore mining operations, and monitored Spanish Morocco, which remained relatively quiet, ultimately returning Tangier to international status after the war. The Diaz family is deathly afraid of the Walkers because of their political power outweighing theirs. So, the Diaz family decided to focus on doing volunteer efforts during the Battle of Bulge and taking over Russia. By this time, the Nazis already fucked over Mussolini and fucked over Stalin. This was a move to take over Soviet Russia. The Nazis had multiple bases in Ukraine via the Wehrmacht headquarters, aka Werwolf, Hegewald, near Zhytomyr, serving as Himmler's field headquarters, and influence in various Ukrainian auxiliary forces, including the SS Division Galicia and the Ukrainian National Army. Due to Franco being grateful for the gold they snatched from Morocco, he offered volunteer support to the Nazis for the Eastern Front. The Blue Division was summoned by the Diazes to fight alongside Germany on the Eastern Front, primarily from 1941 to 1943. They fought against the Soviet Union to combat communism, repay Germany for help during the Spanish Civil War, and maintain Spanish neutrality while keeping the door open for a potential Axis victory. The Blue Division worked with the brutal 250th Infantry Division for the Nazis, also known as the Wehrmacht, was famous for its fierce fighting, particularly around the Leningrad front. They were known for holding the line at the Battle of Krasny Bor in 1943 against a much larger Soviet force. However, the primary motivation for Spain going into the East Front was intense hatred of communism, aiming to liberate Russians from communism and fight what they saw as an existential threat to Catholicism and Spanish tradition. Spain and the Diaz family was scared about being caught playing both sides, since they also have Marxists in their family that control oppositions internationally. Franco and the Diaz family decided to satisfy the pro-Nazi elements of the Spanish regime, the Falange, while remaining technically neutral and avoiding a formal declaration of war against the USSR by Spain. Around 47,000 volunteers, including idealistic fascists, soldiers seeking action, and some former white Russian exiles seeking to combat the Soviet regime, joined as well. However, fighting Soviet forces near Leningrad was extremely dangerous. The Spanish and Nazis fought in harsh weather conditions at -40 degrees Celsius to -56 degrees Celsius, -50 to -68 degrees Fahrenheit. They engaged in brutal, close-quarter combat, including the Battle of Krasny Bor, 1943, where they held off a massive Soviet offensive, inflicting heavy casualties despite despite being heavily outnumbered. Known for using anti-tank weapons, knives and bayonets in berserker-style assaults, even murdering surrendering Russians in cold blood. One battle, the Spaniards who retook positions previously abandoned to the Germans found wounded they had left behind, with their chests torn open with picks. In turn, volunteers from Spain sliced off the ears, noses and fingers of Russian prisoners, then sent them stumbling back to their lines. The Blue Division inflicted significant losses, but also suffered immense casualties, resulting in high turnover of personnel, suffering 95% losses in certain units, such as the ski company. Years later, the Diaz family knew the Walkers were planning to assassinate Hitler and decided to send a member of their family to volunteer and befriend Hitler to help set the stages to fake his death. With the help of blackmail on J. Edgar Hoover from Yang Cheng's Fufu Island operations, the Spook Corps, Yang Cheng and the Diaz family has the United States government by the balls to help fake Hitler's death and continue the Fourth Reich in the West with the use of sleeper agents in their family. However, Yang's family was killed off by his own hand to be the sole heir of the Yang family's fortune, leaving only 10 members of the Yang family left alive as of 1945. Miguel Esquerra Sanchez was a dedicated high-ranking volunteer, a Hauptsturmführer, who, unlike many others, did not abandon the German cause when the Axis started losing to the Allies. Instead, Sanchez acted as a key figure for remaining Spanish fighters. Between April and May 1945, Sanchez commanded a unit of Spanish volunteers known as the Esquerra Unit, linked to the 11th SS Panzer Grenadier Division Nordland and later remnant units of the Charlemagne Division in the defense of Berlin. Due to being one of the last soldiers to survive the bombing of Hitler's bunker, Sanchez was promoted to SS Lieutenant Colonel, Obersturmbannführer, and awarded the Knight's Cross directly by Hitler for Sanchez's loyalty and for Sanchez saving Hitler's life. Sanchez and Hitler escaped through the catacombs for Samos, through the towns of Cebrero, El Hospital, and Triacastella, where he would eventually meet a committee from Samos's convent at a local monastery. After that, the Diaz family arranged for Hitler and Eva Brun to catch a flight to Venezuela, then moved Hitler into Argentina. Originally, Hitler moved to Colombia due to the climate. However, Hitler was met with Nazi hunters, since Colombia was officially on the Allies' side during World War II, playing a strategic role due to its proximity to the Panama Canal and access to both oceans. While Colombia was neutral initially, Colombia severed ties with the Axis powers in 1941 after Pearl Harbor, and officially declared war on November 26, 1943, following German U-boat attacks on Colombian ships. Besides all the opposition, the Diaz family, Spanish government, and FBI successfully got away with faking Hitler's death.
Otis was born in Sussex, United Kingdom, however spent most of his youth back and forth between St. James, Jamaica in the Montego Bay area, and Madrid, Spain. Otis and his brother Raphael grew up spoiled due to their wealth, and was introduced into the family's criminal operations since the age of 3 years old. Due to Otis's family being a human-sacrificing bloodline, both them and the Walker family was responsible for the illegalization of ganja aka marijuana. This was due to this being used as an act of corporate espionage against the hemp industry, make laws to put ganja smokers in prison to make money go back into the system with each arrest and commissary deposit, control the underworld and create big pharma, and the main reason, people high on marijuana can see through and detect their witchcraft immediately. Otis and Raphael grew up sacrificing children in their satanic rituals, usually sent to lure and kidnap children for their parents' satanic rituals. These rituals would usually happen during major astrological or lunar transits. However, the Diaz family do witchcraft for anything they do. Whether it's to eat, sleep, have intercourse, or shit. Everything is ritualized, even down to the way they socialize with people. However, the Diaz family has strong dominion over the religious-industrial complex due to their generous donations to all Christian and Catholic churches internationally, and their family ties to the Vatican via Antipope Clement VIII from 1423 to 1429. Because of this, Otis grew up in the church and got deep into Christianity. While Otis had a strong passion for the church, Otis made his way into being a minister by the age of 14, then became a youth pastor by the age of 18, that did tours internationally due to his family connections. Otis loved to mainly use the Obia brand of witchcraft, which amplified his spell work with the use of the Book of Psalms, while simultaneously focusing his spirit energy on the central nervous system of his targets, since Otis knows all 150 Psalms by heart. Otis realized that he can siphon an overload of energy all at once within just 10 minutes of ministry, by weaponizing everyone's energy with the use of the church steeples to empower his own energy. Otis get power surges of energy from doing sermons and delivering people, having the energy of 10,000 men as he called it. However, Otis was using nothing but energy manipulation whenever he delivered people, by giving people pinches of the same energy he stolen from them, while implanting demons of pride into his church members. However, Otis was also using the church as a front for his family's human trafficking operations, and for his child pornography operations. Otis slept his way into ministry by way of sex magic, mind control, and his natural abilities to emit pheromones in any situation, which caused anyone around him to be hypnotized into having sex with him. Otis has the ability to telepathically hijack the mind of anyone he wants just by way of staring into a person's eyes for at least 6 seconds, as well as by way of fluid binding of each other's DNA. All which is due to their nervous system being interlinked. Otis and Raphael went into business with Bart Walker and Young Ching to start a child porn ring during World War I. They used Otis's ties to the churches in Jamaica and Spain for the operation. They would usually either hex their victims into killing themselves if they detected they would snitch, or pay off the authorities and their parents in gold bars. Otis's taste in children happens to that of ethnic preteens, or children forced to be dressed as their opposite gender. Otis eventually became one of the first televised evangelist pastors in human history, a pastor so powerful people around the world would travel to his megachurch, and beg for sermons to be toured in their own countries. The family dynamic of the Diaz family is rather demented. Otis hates both his father, mother, and brother Raphael. The two brothers are jealous of each other, while they both hate their father, yet Otis hates his mother Valentina due to Valentina always having sex with men in front of Otis as a child indiscriminately. Also due to the fact Valentina and Monserrati pimped him out to the Walker, Danivers, and Spookcore family since the day he was born. The whole family is actually doing witchcraft on each other, mainly for jealousy and assets. Otis is usually getting the crap end of this family's operations since he does all the dirty work, getting into shootouts, getting into car chases, destroying the businesses of Freemasons and Jews in Spain, chopping up bodies, luring all the children, staging out the rituals, doing set design for their porn tapes, conjuring all the demons for those rituals, using his own body as a portal for his family to communicate with those demons during rituals through his sacral and root energy, which is actually painful to him and usually the one getting shot at. Raphael, however, is a lot more sneaky about his operations and loves the pain inflicted on him when conjuring demons through his pineal gland. Raphael is usually paid more by his family since he has more connections to the Americans. Raphael majored in psychology and law at Yale, just to infiltrate the Skull and Bones secret society, just for the Diaz family to have blackmail on the whole Walker family, and everyone in the Skull and Bones. Due to Raphael's infiltration of the Skull and Bones, his family has been causing problems internationally, only sacrificing their sleeper cell and breeding bastard family members to their ops as scapegoats. After graduating Yale, Raphael got into real estate and started buying and selling property in the south and west coast of the United States, as well as selling a bunch of land his family owned in Jamaica, Mexico, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Argentina, and Colombia. While being a real estate agent, Raphael was involved in doing yellow journalism by running a magazine known as the International Informer, a gossip magazine in which he uses to post blackmail he's gathered to control celebrities and anyone he parties and does business with. His magazine is a protected asset of the Spanish government, the FBI, the OSS, Republican, and Democrat Party due to Raphael's generous donations to those organizations. Eventually, during World War II, Raphael became a media personality and Hollywood mogul due to buying out movie studios using their production lots on property bought out by him. These companies usually fall for it because they are usually contracted by shell companies owned by the Diaz family. Raphael eventually got into the drug business with Barney Walker and washed their drug money in Hollywood film productions. Otis is usually a pusher, transporter, and smuggler of Raphael and Barney's drugs, since Barney weaponized his government clearances to smuggle drugs out of the Golden Triangle. However, this caused a nasty drug war between Yang Cheng, Barney, and the Diaz family, since this was cutting into Yang Cheng's territory and drug operations, and the two were directly using the Pacific Campaign to steal poppy and marijuana out of Asia. Yang blamed the whole Diaz and Walker family for it, and struck a deal with the Spook Corps to make life hell for the two bloodlines, by weaponizing Otis against them. The Spook Corps and Yang viewed Otis as weak, easy to corrupt against his bloodline, since they always underestimated him, and mainly because Otis is the dumbest one out of the Diaz family. Yang made a deal with Otis. Otis fought over his family for more influence and respect over his own bloodline, for unlimited child busy on Yang's Fufu Island and Fufu Express, and for total ownership of the Underwater Railroad, a underwater child trafficking transportation system in the Caribbean Sea for clandestine child prostitution operations. This meant Otis has full management of all children coming in and out of the United States from the Caribbean, Central and South America. Yang decided to use Otis's ties as a Nazi spy for Spain to sabotage Otis's family operations, using the Nazis to traffic gold out of Ethiopia. Yang got intel from J. Edgar that Hector Kwan was hired directly by Emperor Haile Selassie himself to sabotage all fascists' operations in Ethiopia, and brutalize all traitors to Ethiopia that gave terrain intel and government secrets to the fascists. Yang took this as an opportunity to have Otis shine. Yang Cheng had already had a strand of Hector's hair from when Hector broken Yang's arm for trying to get a little girl sodomized during the Nanking Massacre. The two decided to work Gong Tao, Obia, and Palo on Hector's anger, causing him to be so angry he was only focused on getting his job done. Otis gave Hector literally all of the plans, militaristic strategies, safe houses, and blueprints the fascists had for Ethiopia, and gave Hector rare strains of weed straight from Jamaica. While brutalizing Nazis, fascist Italians, and traitors of Ethiopia, Otis was Hector's weed plug. Otis is on record for being Hector's quickest weed connection in the world, all due to the fact Otis can fly and swim at subsonic speeds. However, back in Florida, Hector was smoking with Martin and talking about Ethiopia. Martin didn't like the vibe Hector's weed was giving him, since he started getting homosexual thoughts and pain in his anus, which immediately alerted Martin to knowing the weed was hexed. Martin asked Hector where he got his weed from, and found out it's from Otis. Hector then realized he got weird thoughts whenever he smoked it, almost as if he's been telepathically hijacked. While Hector was talking about having weird pain in his heart and anus since Ethiopia, Hector started vomiting while suffering from a heart attack. Martin quickly went for X-ray glasses and realized Hector has a demon known as Leviticus 666 trapped in his throat and wrapped around his heart, parasiting off of his energy. Hector vomited out the Leviticus octopi, stomped it out, rushed into his kitchen to take out a steak knife, cut open his own chest, took a lighter and burned the demon alive. Martin blew up on Hector because he got played by quote-unquote Sephardic psychopaths that like to do social engineering with witchcraft, and betrayed their own kind to the Nazis just to have blackmail over the Freemasons. Hector immediately detected Otis was remote viewing him the whole time, and was the one telepathically hijacking him and Martin. Martin offered to put a military contract out on Otis, but Hector decided to want to handle it his own way. One Sunday morning in June 1936, Otis was having a sermon on homosexuality and the book of Leviticus. Hector immediately walked into Otis's church and shot Otis in his mouth and face at point-blank range while Otis was on the pulpit reading Leviticus 20-13 to the church. Otis eventually recovered from the shooting due to his Atlantean DNA and began spying on Hector. Monserrate decided to wiretap all of Hector's communications and use the Latino community to do bioterrorism on Hector's food, clothing, shelter and drinks, as fluid binding to control and monitor Hector's every move. Because Hector found out the Diaz's sick the Latino community on him and got him poisoned everywhere he went because of an order done by the Diaz family, Hector decided to hunt down Monserrate and Otis. However, Monserrate and Otis kidnapped Hector while in Madrid. Monserrate and Rafael lock Hector up in their dungeon underneath the catacombs. Hector is locked in golden handcuffs due to Warches believing Lemurians' weakness is gold since Lemurians don't use gold. Montserrat and Otis attempted to intimidate Hector by talking about how they are going to cannibalize and rape his corpse. Hector stared at them without saying a word. Otis demanded a response, and stabbed Hector in his belly button with a golden knife. Monserrate then breaks a bottle of tequila across Hector's face and starts to pee on Hector's shoes. Hector chewed on some of the glass stuck in his cheek, spat that glass shard through Monserrate's laughing mouth. When Monserrate was about to die from instant asphyxiation, Hector broke out of his golden shackles and smashed Monserrate's head like a pumpkin by clapping, then stared down the panicking Otis, and beat the ever-loving shit out of him while Otis screamed for his life. Hector brutalized Otis to the point of near decapitation, and every bone was broken in Otis's body, leaving him for dead. Months later, Hector eventually found out from Martin that Otis survived due to his Atlantean DNA, meaning Otis has rubber-like bone cartilage and can reattach limbs, which is why Martin wanted to put out a military contract. Martin also told Hector that the Diaz family is spying on him and Hector's every move with the use of blackmail compromised Freemason bloodlines from the White Terror. Latino sleeper recruited gang stalkers to harass and poison Hector and Martin, wiretapped their phone, burglarized their homes, and had every watch in the world working witchcraft on them besides those under the Walker clan's authority. Martin decided to put military contracts on Otis and his whole family since they are all compromised sleeper cells that forever destroyed the national security of the United States of America to the Nazis, fascists and Marxists, and because they became a non-stop nuisance to Ashkenazi Jews with the use of anti-Freemason anti-Semitic propaganda, and a non-stop pain in the ass to Hector. Martin paid Hector $2 million just for Hector killing Montserrat in an instinctual blind rage, since Montserrat created the White Terror, which fucked up the Loomis family's shell companies in Spain. Hector still wanted direct smoke with Otis because Hector had enough of having his privacy and body invaded by Otis and his disgusting family. Hector swam to the underwater railroad to kill Otis for good. However, Hector was attacked and raped by a giant squid summoned by Otis. After that, Hector was given strict orders to stay away from Otis because he's an OSS and FBI asset by Barney Walker and Jerry Jonas. This was because the Diaz family and Otis himself made a deal with Barney to betray Adolf Hitler in order to keep their jurisdiction and ownership of the underwater railroad after the assassination of Young Chen. Luckily for the Diaz family, they have enough blackmail on the Yankees due to Rafael's infiltration of the Skull and Bones, occupation of the Freemasons due to their seize of their records and archives during the White Terror and family's infiltration of the organization, and the fact that Rafael had Barney under a loyalty spell which clouded Barney's intuition against him with the use of fluid binding from all the gay sex they've had with each other since the 1930s. Otis is said to be one of the main antagonists in gas-punk fiction, Operation Cursebreaker, as Hector and Kaya goes rogue to assassinate Adolf Hitler and all of his Nazi spies involved in Operation Civil Shepherd. Otis Delgado Diaz's natal chart is Sun in Leo, Moon in Aries and Pisces rising. Otis's main arm is a obia. His side arm is anything .45 caliber.
I am a madman.
Richard Dick Loomis.
Codename
The Rain Man.
Was born in the country. I don't deal with rumpets.
I am a contest, yeah.
Richard Dick Loomis was born August 16, 1950 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Richard aka Dick is the son of Hector Kwan's best friend inventor Martin Loomis and socialite feminist Ashley Erin Katz. Richard grew up in Broward County during his youth. While he was raised by both parents, Dick spent most of his time with his mom, while Martin was busy with the development of the Israeli Mossad and their quest to eliminate all Nazi war criminals that escaped the Nuremberg trials with the use of Nazi hunters. After the age of 3, Dick's mom started having an affair with Warch industrialist Barney Walker, who was also in a self-imposed competition with Martin Loomis to have control and administrative control and oversight over the Mossad's Nazi hunting operations in the United States government and media. Barney having an affair with Stephanie and spending time with Dick was all a part of Barney's plan to brainwash Ashley and Richard against Martin. Barney took advantage of Martin focusing on the development of the Israeli Mossad in order to destroy Martin's family life, swap destinies with Martin without his consent by way of switch destiny witchcraft, and dominate his soul by doing domination spells on Martin's semen that was stolen from Martin by his own wife Ashley Erin Katz, and MK Ultra psychological operations which involved brainwashing his loved ones and the Jewish community against Martin. Dick became resentful of Martin since Martin was always busy overseas, focusing on taking out Nazi war criminals. Although Martin took Dick with him during operations as a form of father-son bonding, Dick still grew resentment for his father because of Barney's witchcraft casting illusion spells on Dick's perception of his own father, and Martin not spoiling Dick with lavish gifts like Barney does. Unlike Martin, who likes to build inventions to help people and isn't a racist, Richard was always fascinated with building technology to destroy lives like AI missile defense systems, transhumanism, human cloning, mobile remote-controlled nuclear weapons, microchip implants and asbestos cigarettes to give to the black community. Secretly, Ashley Erin Katz and Barney are cousins who conspired against Martin for his life insurance policy and to inherit steal Martin's war bonds and control gaslighting industries from within. Martin's stress from his marriage as well as Dick being brainwashed against him, his own family and the entire Jewish community turning against him for Barney because of Martin being anti-Zionist, and calling out all the Judenrats responsible for selling out the reputation of Jewish people for positions of power over humanity during Operation Paperclip, and Malcolm X's death led to Martin dying of a nasty heart attack in 1965 when Dick was 14 years old. Barney's spellwork caused Martin's heart to explode in his chest. No one had a funeral for Martin besides Dick's godfather Hector Kwan. All of Martin's friends and family were threatened with blackmail by Barney to not hold a proper funeral for Martin, or attend the funeral services Hector paid for out of his own pocket. Barney married Ashley Erin Katz a day after Martin's death, and even celebrated his death with Dick and Raphael Diaz by partying on Martin's grave during a graveyard humiliation ritual done by Barney and Raphael. This was the first night Dick ever had alcohol. Dick was so blackout drunk that night, Dick was molested and gang raped by both Barney and Raphael on top of Martin's grave on camera. However, Raphael put a memory wipe spell on Dick to forget the experience. The goal was to fluid bind with Dick and initiate Dick into Barney and Raphael's satanic brotherhood known as the Black Rose Society unknowingly. Since then, Dick became an arrogant, cold-blooded, narcissistic psychopath obsessed with making a name for himself in the weapons industrial complex. In order to fund his inventions, Dick started selling heroin, LSD, cocaine, and PCP into New York from Barney and Raphael's operations in the Vietnam poppy fields. Ashley Erin Katz forbade Dick from using their inheritance and war bonds to fund his inventions because Ashley Erin Katz thought the money would be wasted on failed inventions due to Dick's age at the time, and Ashley Erin Katz also wanted Dick to sell her drugs for her under the radar of the FBI and Treasury. Barney realized Richard's obsession with trying to control the weather with technology and decided to weaponize Richard's obsession with weather modification against the Viet Cong. Barney and Richard helped with the development of Operation Popeye. Operation Popeye was a top-secret U.S. military project during the Vietnam War 1967-1972 that used cloud seeding to extend the monsoon season over parts of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The goal was to increase rainfall to create muddy, impassable conditions that would slow down enemy truck traffic. They laced high clouds with silver iodide to create rain to slow down the traffic on the trail. Barney also hired Richard to be involved in a weather modification experiment known as Project Stormfury back in 1964. The project was a weather modification experiment attempt to weaken tropical cyclones by flying aircrafts directly into them and seeding them with silver iodide. The last experimental flight was flown in 1971, and was officially cancelled more than a decade after the last modification experiment. Both Barney and Richard left the project in 1975 to focus their ambitions on taking over the CIA. Although the project failed to achieve its goal of decreasing the destructiveness of hurricanes, it's noted that the storm life cycle can be modified to be more destructive if there's a dramatic change of temperature in terms of heat, and manipulating the seabed with soundwave impulses. Barney and Richard also found out that if there's enough vibrational disturbance on the seabed, it can trigger breaks within the tectonic plates with soundwave vibrations, or drilling through the seabed with lasers from a direct energy weapon aka DEW into the seabed. However, Hector was warned about Dick being spiritually and morally compromised by Barney and Stephanie in Martin's journal and warned not to trust anything invention or weapons that's involved in AI, cellular regeneration with the use of human stem cells, nanotechnology, weather modification technology via cloud seeding, direct energy weapons with microwave technology and lasers, cybernetics, wormholes, RFID microchips, bioweapons, mass surveillance with the use of micro cameras, developing space marines with the use of super soldiers and nanotechnology, human and animal cloning, and transhumanism. Dick had an obsession with transhumanism and making clones of human beings by way of nuclear fusion. Luckily, Martin left a backup of weapons and reverse-engineered Lemurian warp-proof body armor in 3 bunkers left for the Quans in Plantation, Sunrise, and Tamarack, Florida. Dick's service to Barney and Raphael's drug operations and Operation Popeye was rewarded by Barney giving Dick a job as a mission controller at NASA during the first launch of the Saturn V rocket on November 9, 1967. Barney realized Dick is the perfect protege to groom for his criminal operations due to Dick being not only a natural-born technopath, but also has an abundance of knowledge about magic and how to utilize magic and witchcraft when developing technology. The problem Barney had with Dick is Dick hates magic because he feels magic make things worse due to Barney wanting Dick to create portals to interact with interdimensional entities with ease of access. Dick wanted to instead reverse engineer technology from these entities Barney conjured. However, while doing a seance and building a portal to contact Zeta Greys in the Blue Mountains of Jamaica for Barney while Barney was stalking the Quans while they worked for Bob Marley, Dick was fucked over by the Jamaican government as a sacrifice for Zeta Grey technology and gold for their Obeah rituals. This led to Dick being off-world while he was forced into sexual slavery and probed by those Zeta Greys. This was also done to Dick because the Zeta Greys was strong-arming Barney for minerals his family controls in Ethiopia, and the Zetas took advantage of the Jamaican government's hatred for Rastafari to make it happen. When Barney found out what happened to Dick, Barney cursed the Jamaican government's cloaking from the Rasta community and the United States government for trying to compromise his relationship with his greatest protege. On September 1974, Barney organized a coup against Ethiopia and placed Emperor Haile Selassie I on house arrest. On August 27, 1975, Richard had to be summoned back to Earth by giving away all the gold ores in Ethiopia, which led to Barney kidnapping and assassinating Emperor Haile Selassie I with the Derg, and buried his remains under a toilet at the Jubilee Palace in Addis Ababa. The use of a Russian coup on Ethiopia was to cover up Barney's ties to Emperor Haile Selassie's assassination. After being held in intergalactic sexual slavery by Zeta Greys for a year, the situation led to Dick having seething resentment for Barney, and which traumatized Dick from ever touching witchcraft ever again. Dick felt so betrayed by Barney even though it's not Barney's fault he decided to start plotting a dead man switch in case Barney fucked him over again. To make it up to Dick, Barney promised Dick a position as a quartermaster for the CIA. Barney just needed time to sacrifice and assassinate Bob Marley to make it happen. Dick took advantage of Hector being his godfather as a dead man switch against Barney. Dick became closer with the Quans in case he needed help against Barney. Dick knew Barney's obsession with the Quans and Barney's pedophilia was Barney's biggest weakness. Hector's son took a liking to Dick and looked up to him like a big brother. Unlike Martin, Shen's godfather, and Jeremy Zudin, who had undying loyalty to the Quan family, Dick was jealous of Shen because of his perfect family life, his innocence, Shen's Lemurian heritage, Shen's psychic abilities, and his strong hatred for children. Dick's hatred for children and Shen is so extreme. Dick's sense of humor mainly came from children in life-threatening situations or in fear. Dick loved playing life-threatening pranks on Shen while gaslighting him whenever Shen went to him for help. Secretly, Dick wanted to be just like Shen but knew it will never happen in his lifetime. An example of Dick's sense of humor is sending Shen on a seek and destroy operation in Studio 54 to retrieve blackmail on Barney's criminal operations in Studio 54. However, the joke to Dick is Dick secretly used Shen as a honeydick to entrap certain celebrities into having a gangbang with the 11-year-old Shen in a private room. While this happened, Shen was stuck in a room with 10 heavily armed PMCs, and 6 celebrities with abdominal raging erections while they all watched gay porn from a Super 16 projector. When Shen was about to get molested, Shen ended up killing everyone in the room and accidentally starting a fire. Although Shen didn't get sexually abused and retrieve the blackmail, Shen was severely traumatized for life by what he witnessed in Studio 54 and the fact Shen almost got gang raped by 6 Hollywood celebrities. Shen's trauma and him almost getting gang raped in Studio 54 is what made Dick laugh so hard he proudly shat himself in front of the traumatized Shen. Another example of Richard's sense of humor and jealousy of Shen is when Shen needed gear to save his parents. Richard gave Shen a 15-year-old outdated flak jacket as body armor and a rusted revolver, instead of the usual Lemurian body armor, and the usual guns the agency provided Shen's parents with. When the two got to Guyana, Richard then ditched the 11-year-old Shen in the middle of the jungle of Jonestown 3 miles away from Jim Jones's base with no map, no ammo, no melee weapons, and no communication devices to stay in touch in case trouble arrived, abandoning Shen on purpose in Guyana after the airdrop. During Operation Grindhouse in Guyana, Hector Kwan and his wife Kaya was taken hostage by Jerry Jonas's son Hayden and Barney. The reason Hector's son Shen went to Richard for help was because while he was spying on Barney, Shen found photos of Dick being raped by Barney and Raphael on Martin's grave the night Martin was buried. In the aftermath of Operation Grindhouse, Dick discovered Barney and his mom lied to him his whole life, being disgusted and betrayed that he was working for the paperclip Nazis at NASA the whole time, finding out his mom is related to Judenrats that betrayed his own people for leadership positions in the Nazi Party, finding out his mother is an inbred from the Walker family, brainwashed against his father, raped by Barney and Raphael on Super 8 camera on his father's grave, and felt beyond betrayed for Barney protecting the Nazis of Operation Paperclip the whole time since the ending of World War II. Dick became so disillusioned with the government, his mom, his family, and the Jewish community, Dick denounced his Ashkenazi heritage and became a full-blown atheist. After the downfall of Barney Walker and Operation Grindhouse, Jeremy Zuden got revenge on Richard for giving Shen bullshit gear and leaving Shen to die in Guyana. Jeremy got Richard fired from the CIA and banned from working in all United States intelligence agencies. This situation left Dick out of a stable job for over a decade. For the rest of the 1980s and early 1990s, Dick was an arms dealer who specialized in creating designer weapons and technology for terrorists, for the right price. Hayden Jonas, the CIA's deputy director from between 1981-1991, decided to hire Dick to create weapons and technology for his own black operations during the final years of the Cold War. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, Dick decided to lay low to avoid getting caught up in Hayden's rogue Lemurian DNC Draken National Committee terrorist operations, since the Galactic Federation was onto Hayden's international sleeper cell network. After Jeremy Zuden's death in 1996, Richard got a job at CERN developing and building their Hadron Collider in Marin, Switzerland, approximately 1 hour and 29 minutes from the CIA's underwater base in Lake Geneva. Richard secretly wanted to weaponize the job to create a portal to the Zeta Gray's homeworld Reticulum 4 located 39 million light-years away from Earth in the Zeta Reticuli star system. The goal was to open portals to all of their motherships, and blow it all up as revenge for sexually enslaving him for a year back in 1974. In 2007, Dick found out the Zeta Gray's homeworld was destroyed over hundreds of thousands of years ago, and only had a couple of motherships left in our galaxy. When Richard was confronted by every scientist and superiors at CERN over his vendetta against the Zeta Grays, Richard had a panic attack, activated the portal of the Hadron Collider, activated multiple mobile 1 million megaton nukes he secretly built into the walls of the CERN lab, and shot them through the portal, destroying only 3 of the 8 motherships in our galaxy. All the CERN scientists, engineers, and security guards collectively had to beat the shit out of Dick just to calm him down. Fortunately, Richard was sent to a psych ward for his psychotic breakdown and had everyone at CERN trying to kill him for popping off a Zeta Gray war with NASA and ruining Zeta Gray trade relations with NASA. Hayden got word of Richard losing his mind at CERN and broke Dick out of the loony bin, murdered everyone at CERN, and the two replaced everyone at CERN with chiphead clones made with Dick's nuclear fusion technology. Hayden and Dick then released a bunch of top-secret government intel from NASA and CERN all over the internet and YouTube to initiate Hayden's hostile takeover of NASA, CERN, and the United States government. Hayden saved Dick because Hayden has been suffering from Parkinson's disease since 1974, and needed someone to finish adding militaristic applications to the Young family's muscle suit from Project Apollo. In 2007, Hayden was knocking on stage 4 Parkinson's. Another reason is for Operation Midnight Show, which is Hayden's plans to create a cosmic radiation manipulator to manipulate CMEs from solar flares with the use of Gwen towers and Wi-Fi. Dick agreed to help out, but Hayden made him do it under the condition he settled down and get a small-time job for the sake of his mental health. So Richard became a sergeant deputy of Fort Lauderdale Police Department. Richard was a lousy dirty cop that spent most of his time stealing weed from teenagers, and choke-slamming truant children, skateboarders, and pot-smoking teens, Undertaker style. In 2008, Dick got married to real estate agent Tiffany Gonzalez Rocha Rivera Sanchez. However, in 2010, Dick was arrested for shooting his wife and her black friend dead during a traffic stop. Richard knew Tiffany was cheating on him with a black man, but unfortunately Richard was so blinded with rage and his mother's inherited racism that the black man he shot was Tiffany's gay best friend. To make matters worse, Dick's being a reject of the Black Rose Society wife Tiffany is the grandniece of Rafael Diaz and was used as a honeypot to destabilize Hayden's operations and dominate Richard for shits and giggles. Because of this, Richard was sentenced to the electric chair, that's to be televised on local news stations as a form of public humiliation, to shut Dick up about raping him on his father's grave, and retribution for Tiffany. But Hayden also had smoke with the Diaz family since the 1960s because the Diaz family were trafficking Hayden to closeted homosexual politicians just to move up the ranks in the CIA, under his aunt's nose. Hayden's connections got Dick off with 20 years probation and 2 years of anger management. Richard was then demoted and transferred to Sunrise Police Department patrolling the Sawgrass Mills Mall on weekends, usually getting his kicks off of harassing Shen's kids whenever they are trying to see an R-rated movie in theaters with their friends. On December 21, 2012, Shen went on a revenge mission to raid the base of Operation Midnight Show. Dick stalls Shen to buy time for Hayden, but Shen brutally defeated the two as time ran out. In the Loomis-Xanthus affair, Richard is the leader of Cult 25, a technocratic death cult bent on enslaving the teenage population into a white supremacist transhumanist totalitarian dictatorship with women and children under transhumanist mind control. Cult 25 goes around kidnapping the population of Broward County for experimentation in their organs. For every heart and brain Richard and Cult 25 collects from the population of teenagers and children is used to genetically duplicate their bodies, put their consciousness and injecting their replicated DNA the wombs of memory-wiped women over the age of 25 inside incubation tanks, drill RFID microchips inside their earholes of their genetic duplicates and repopulate the world with clones under Richard Loomis's complete technocratic mind control. Dick's natal chart is Sun in Leo, Moon in Virgo, and Libra rising. Dick doesn't have a main arm due to being an expert weapons inventor, so Dick will use anything in his arsenal at any time to kill anyone that crosses him, just to be petty and show off his inventions and authority. Dick's sidearm is a 45 caliber ACP Uzi submachine gun.
What they gonna do? What they gonna say? When the heads start roll, the heads start roll. When the truth unfolds, the truth unfolds. Fighting for commodity while they gain power. The rich benefits while the poor man suffers. But when the day comes and the tables turn, the walls of Babylon will surely burn, burn. What they gonna do? What they gonna say? When the heads start roll, the heads start roll. When the truth unfolds, the heads start roll. From the north to the south, to the east, to the west, all four corners of the world, it's a global mess, yeah. Time is of the essence, so we need to spread the message. Whoa, whoa. One people, one world, one love, more life. Mr. Brown prophesied to stop the fussing and the fighting. Can you feel the presence of the godliness deep within? Rastafari, boy. What they gonna do? What they gonna say? When the heads start roll, the heads start roll. Unfolds, the heads start roll. Ooh, yeah.
and drink blood. Original Butcher Bantam from him place. Show your face, road boy. Hear me now. All
All road boy, man fit dead. Just make them know we not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a informer head, man fit dead. Jungle is not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a informer head. Them never hear what the general said. From a guy, this the program, it a fit dead. Them coulda like a cock, or every like let me 4-4 magnum. No left hand, and me better coulda plead them a plea, or a beg them a go beg, man fit dead. Just make them know we not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a informer head, man fit dead. Just make them know we not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a informer head. He that keep it his mouth, shall keep it his life a boy. Chat up me business, you know it not go nice. Tell him family and friends to prepare him 9 night. Cause if me buck him a day or if me buck him a night, me can bet you I don't win it. Now go be a pretty sight. Cause some two hurry come up and some two force right man fit dead. Just make them know we not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a informer head, man fit dead. Yard man not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a watch out. You see how time get hard and things are run red. Before me save me petrol, me sell them instead. Not show me, not take no sorry, and me not take no usher. From a guy this me just bust it head up. Me no ram, me no joke, me no play no skin up. Me carry crocodile heart and iguana stomach, man fit dead. Just make them know we not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a informer head, man fit dead. Me party not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a watch out. All white, all bad boy, put your gun in your hand. And we not break no people, and we not powder man. Jungle is bad boy, put up your gun no. From a boy a big shot, you know we not go. If we dead under we hand, if him test right now, man fit dead. Just make them know we not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a informer head, man fit dead. Yard man not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a watch out. Cause if you have the Mach 10 and you have the Uzi, put the party on the right now, man afraid for boss it. If you have the 16 and you have the one papa, from a boy this will just bust it. Take top man fit dead. Just make them know we not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a informer head, man fit dead. Just make them know we not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a informer. So either keep it his mouth, shall also keep his life a boy. That's what make business, you know we not go nice. Tell him family and friends to prepare him 9 night. Cause if me buck him and you're with me, buck him and night, me can bet you I don't win it. Now go be a pretty sight. Cause some two hurry come up and some two force right them fit dead. Just make them know me not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a informer head, man fit dead. Yard man not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a watch out. You see how time get out and things are run red. Before you save your petrol, you fi sell them instead of to me. Not take no sorry, me not take no hush. From a guy this me just bust it head up. Me no ram, me no joke, me no play no skin up. Me carry crocodile heart and iguana stomach, man fit dead. Just make them know we not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a informer, man fit dead. Jungle is not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a watch out. If you bad boy, put on no gun punker. White all bad boy, wanna stop fire shot. Parkland bad boy, put on no gun punker. From a guy this we just bust it dead. Top man for dead. Just make them know we not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a informer head, man for dead. Jungle is not save no lead. Gunshot for bust up in a watch out. Them coulda hit like a cock or even every like leather. This up the program, you know them.